Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendation for novels, comment below. Spider-Man, Across the Universe. Chapter 21: The Three Stupid Bandits. Faced with this situation, the Orlando police officer was obviously quite depressed. Who knew that the bulletproof glass used in this gold shop was so strong? Normal bulletproof glass, although it is also bulletproof, actually still has an upper limit, and it is not high. Generally speaking, with their police Glock pistols and 9x19mm parabellum pistol bullets, if you find the right position and shoot a few more shots, the bulletproof glass will be shattered and the kinetic energy in the bullets will not be able to continue to be transmitted to the rear, thus losing the effect of bulletproof. In the past, this method was also invaluable to them. But this time, the bulletproof glass installed in this store is surprisingly thick, and the bulletproof effect is better than ordinary ones. Caught off guard, a police officer responsible for breaking the window was injured by a stray bullet that bounced back. Of course, the New York police are not vegetarian. After paying the price of a police officer being injured, they finally found the weakest point, which was the gate of the gold shop. But unfortunately, due to being blocked by bulletproof glass, the meaning of raid has been lost. After the robbers inside discovered this situation, they immediately threatened them, saying that if similar things happened again, they would kill the hostages without hesitation. In desperation, the stalemate has continued until now. Then what should I do? Bede asked humbly. If there were just a group of robbers inside, even if they had guns, he would still dare to go in and try. During the previous training, the Shadow Spider also used his revolver to train Pete on the coordination of spider perception and body response. In this regard, the Shadow Spiders agreed that B had qualified. So, he wasn't particularly afraid of guns. The spider's sensory dodge effect is full, it's not just talk. But with hostages in it, he's a bit of a muggle. If the hostage is injured, wouldn't he become the second generation of Menbias? What are you protecting? 23,333. Cough, just kidding. It's just that Bede was really worried that if he stormed in, these guys would kill the hostages without stopping. As far as he knew, there should be no death penalty in Eagle Country. In other words, even if these robbers killed someone, they would be sentenced to a few more years at most. It is best to find a more suitable method, so as to prevent the other party from jumping over the wall in a hurry and getting to this point. Orlando police officer said, "We were still hesitating, but since you are here, maybe there is no need to hesitate." Hey? What do you mean? Pedro wondered. We decided to do what the robbers said and provide them with a vehicle so they could leave the Kelkin store. At that time, we could take the opportunity to kill them, said Orlando police officer. Wait, you said kill? Bede was a little surprised. The Orlando police officer nodded solemnly. The other party is a gunman who may pose a threat to the lives of the police officers. Unless they put down their weapons, the only way to go is to kill them. Bede was speechless for a moment. He suddenly remembered that this was the Eagle Country, not a country he was familiar with. The laws here are different from what he is familiar with. Officer Orlando ignored his strange behavior and continued, "At that time, you will need to stop their vehicles as much as possible. This is Spider-Man's specialty, right?" "Right." Bede nodded slowly, thinking about when he would stop the vehicle. Yet Sergeant Orlando seemed to have more confidence in him than Bede himself. After communicating with B, he used the walkie-talkie to report the situation here. Not long after, a car was parked at the door of Kelkin's store, and at the same time, the police cars that were blocking the road also gave way symbolically. At least judging from this neighborhood, it was indeed cleared out of an escape route. But farther away, several police cars and a lot of police officers had already hidden, waiting for an order, and opened fire to kill the robbers. This kind of coquettish operation opened B's eyes and called him a good guy. The robbers in the gold store didn't know what they were thinking. After checking the situation outside, they actually walked out of the gold store. Bede finally saw the appearance of the three robbers. Two black and one white, the three of them don't look very old, probably around 27 or years old. Each of the three held a pistol in their hands. In addition, the leading black man had one arm around a middle-aged woman's neck, and pointed a pistol at her with the other hand. The middle-aged woman was apparently Ms. Creevy, the owner of the gold shop. The robber who hijacked Ms. Creevy obviously still had some awareness of protection, and intentionally or unintentionally hid herself behind Ms. Creevy. Walking behind were two young robbers, one black and one white, holding a pistol in one hand and a heavy package in the other. It's probably the gold jewelry they just robbed inside. After all, this is a gold shop. The three carefully looked at the police car and police officers in the distance, and then quickly got into the car. "Madam, thank you for your generosity." The leading black robber got into the car and pushed Ms. Creevy away. At the same time, the engine was started quickly, and the vehicle began to run quickly. "Ah!" Ms. Creevy exclaimed, staggered, and almost fell to the ground. With sharp eyes and quick hands, Pete shot out a spider web, grabbed her, and then quickly came to her side and held her up. Thank you, thank you." Ms. Creevy thanked her in shock. "Spider-Man." It's Spider-Man, but not the one you know," Peeta explained casually. "Okay, ma'am, I'll teach those guys a lesson for you now, see you later." As he said that, he exerted a little force on his feet and jumped more than 10 meters high. At the same time, spider threads shot out one after another, and his figure began to swing forward rapidly. Below. The actions of the robbers kicked off a day full of energy in New York. As if agreed upon, police sirens rang out in the streets and alleys in all directions. These stupid gangsters just happened to catch up with the time when the police officers in this area had just started work. No other cases have been received at this moment, and all police officers are idle. 1, 2, 3, 6, I'll go, catch 3 robbers, dispatched at least 20 police officers, a lot of martial arts, Bede sighed as he followed quickly. Swinging spider silk on the street is much more complicated than indoors. Because some emergencies need to be taken into account. In addition, in order to escape the pursuit, the robber's car raced wildly and made turns in the city, which made the pursuit even more difficult. After a while, B felt that the distance between himself and the robber's car seemed to be widened. This made Bede involuntarily think of the feeling when he first played the Spider-Man game. There will always be some pursuit missions in the game, and he needs to seize some opportunities and jump directly into the car. Well, this method is good, try it. End of this chapter. Chapter 22 Victory in the First Battle. Bede suddenly stopped and pressed his body against the outer wall of a building. Not far behind, the Gwen spider that had been following him also stopped. What is he going to do? Why did he stop? Is he going to give up? Gwen couldn't help but feel a little disappointed in Bede, and some thoughts in her heart faded away. At this moment, Peeta suddenly moved. I saw him suddenly change direction and quickly climb towards the roof of the building where he was. When he was more than 20 meters away from the top of the building, Bede shot out a thread of spider silk with both hands at the same time, and then pulled it sharply. With a classic move spider silk ejection, Bede's speed suddenly increased a lot. He quickly climbed up to the top of the building, then jumped several times in a row to reach a building at the other end of the street. In the street below, the robber's car also drove towards this side quickly. 3, 2, 1 surprise! Peeta jumped straight from the roof, and then hit the roof of the high-speed robber's car squarely. Of course it was all planned by him. When he was on the roof of the building just now, he found that there were police cars coming on both sides of the next few road sections that the robber's car passed, so he concluded that they would not dare to drive in the direction of the police car, and would only choose the current road. So, he simply took a shortcut directly from the roof. Walking from the sky does not need to consider road conditions, turns, etc., but it is faster than driving below. Damn it, what is it? There was an angry curse in the car, but no one dared to look out. After all, they were still chasing the police car behind them, and no one could guarantee whether they would be shot if they stuck their heads out. Pedro reached out and grabbed himself firmly on the roof of the car, then poked his head down and knocked on the car window. "Hey, can you open the window? I have something to say to you." Fack. The black robber sitting here was taking out a big gold ring from his pocket and slapping it on his hand. He was immediately taken aback. Then when he saw Pedro's appearance clearly, he was taken aback even more. Spider-Man. Aren't you dead?" "I'm not the Spider-Man, you know." "Well, it's a long story, or you can stop the car first, and we can talk slowly," Pedro suggested sincerely. "Bah! Even if you are the real Spider-Man, we won't get out of the car," the black robber cursed. The white robber beside him whispered, "This is Spider-Man, why don't we surrender?" The black robber said angrily, "Surrender? Didn't you hear what he said? He is not the Spider-Man we know. Why should you surrender?" "Very good, you deserve to be a robber, you just have spirit," Pedro said in admiration, and then raised his fist. "Since this is the case, I can only convince people with reason." Bang! A crisp sound. The car window was smashed by Pedro's fist. The momentum of the fist caused broken glass to fill the back seat of the car, and the two robbers sitting in the back seat were scratched and screamed repeatedly. At this time, the vehicle suddenly came to a sudden stop. It turned out that the black robber who was driving found out what was going on behind him and tried to throw Pedro away. Pedro's body was indeed lifted up due to inertia. But the power of biostatic electricity is not covered. Now he is quite proficient in the use of this ability, and has reached the point where he can retract and release it freely. Not to mention just a small break, even if the car overturned, he didn't want to get off, and he still couldn't get off. However, the effect is still there. He just stuck one hand to the car, and the rest of his body was free. Caught off guard, his body was slightly turned over, and his back slammed heavily on the corner between the door on one side and the roof of the car, directly denting the corner. "Oh, my back, Pedro yelled. His scream made the black robber driving the car unconsciously smile. He accelerated the car again, and did not forget to turn around and show off to his two companions who had suffered a loss. "Look, this rookie Spider-Man appeared out of nowhere, it's pretty easy to deal with." Dong dong dong. Before he could finish his sentence, there was a knock on the driver's window. Pedro's head appeared in the driver's seat window this time. "My back, do you think I would say that? In fact, it doesn't hurt very much, it's not as painful as Mr. Shadow's punch during training. But dude, your behavior is not only impolite, but also suspected of dangerous driving. I think I should not only lock you up, but also revoke your driver's license. Damn it, you're going to die." The black robber who was driving was obviously very irritable, picked up the pistol that was set aside, and shot B in the face twice. This car is just an ordinary car, and the car glass used is also very ordinary, and it shatters after a dozen. But that damned spider's head was only a little off twice, and it dodged the two bullets, looking very relaxed and comfortable. "Fake," the black robber driving the car roared, pulling the trigger repeatedly, trying to empty the magazine in one go. "It's too dangerous, buddy," Pedro said, unaccustomed to him. A spider thread shot on his wrist, directly knocked off the pistol, and stuck his hand to the seat at the same time. Then, he shot another ball of spider silk, which stuck to the steering wheel. "Damn it, why don't you beat him to death?" the black robber driving the car yelled at his two companions in the back seat. "You're going to kill me every now and then, it's so scary." Pedro moved his body, and directly reached out to press on the rear door, activated by biological static electricity, and then pulled it hard. Bang! The car door was torn off abruptly. "Well, are you going to get out of the car obediently, or should I come?" Pete shook the car door in his hand and asked with his head. Get off, we surrender. Mom, I don't dare anymore. This move of his completely broke the psychological defense of the three naive gangsters. Tear the car door with your hands, who can resist it? They were afraid that if they would not agree, the next moment the hand would be placed on their bodies, and then they would be torn in half. The robber's car braked suddenly, leaving a long brake mark on the ground, and stopped. The three robbers got out of the car one by one, looking very well behaved. Bede let go of his hand, and with a clang, the car door slammed on the ground, causing the three of them to tremble again. Hold your head in your hands and squat on the ground. Squat down, Peter ordered. Under physical deterrence, the three robbers obeyed obediently. Soon, Orlando police officers were chasing him from behind. B made no intention of continuing the conversation this time. He looked up, and soon found the figure of Gwen Spider on the roof of a nearby building. How is my performance? Is it considered qualified? Bede asked with some expectation. This was the first time in his life that he had done such a thing, so he was inevitably a little excited. But it was strange to say that he felt that after the matter was settled, he was more excited than when he was dealing with the incident just now. Then he thought about it carefully. Is mouth cannon really a passive skill of Spider-Man, has the effect of relieving tension? Thanks to Wandeo Ziobewen for the reward of 5,000 starting coins, thanks to Alex for the frozen 1,500 starting coins reward, and thanks to Book Friends 20210107211031009, Tian Hanwei Yu, Gotham Detective, Brother Tao who opened a shop selling rice cakes, and Book Friend 20220501123723503 for starting coins reward. End of this chapter. Chapter 23 Post-War Summary. Chapter 23 Post-War Summary. Gwen Spider looked at him and said lightly, "Not bad, out of points, I can score points." Ah? So low. Bede was a little unconvinced, he felt that he had done a good job. Gwen Spider said, "In fact, at the gate of the gold shop, when the robbers get on the car, you can stop them. There is no need to chase them all the way, and you almost lost them." Peter thought for a while, and it seemed to make sense. When he was at the entrance of the gold store, he was actually hiding behind a signboard obliquely in front of the gold store. But when he saw that Ms. Creevy was about to fall, he subconsciously wanted to help her first. If he shot directly at the robbers at that time, he should be able to subdue them in a few seconds. No, if you shot at that time, the other party might still hurt Ms. Creevy. Bede argued. At that time, the robber's car was still in front of the gold shop, and the back seat was in line with Ms. Creevy. From that point of view, the possibility of the robbers shooting Ms. Creevy in desperation cannot be ruled out. "You can overturn the car," Gwen Spider said lightly. In this operation, Bede suddenly realized that the car was actually only about 2 tons, and with his strength, it was more than enough to lift the whole car, not to mention overturning it. And once the car is overturned, the robbers in the car will naturally lose the ability to shoot. But such a violent method, proposed by a delicate girl, is it really reasonable? Thinking about it, Bede gave Gwen Spider a strange look in his eyes. Gwen Spider seemed to sense the meaning in Bede's eyes, and said, "Isn't it good to use the most direct and effective method to solve the problem?" "That's great, you taught me a lot, thank you Gwen, it's great to have a friend like you." Bede looked into Gwen Spider's eyes and said seriously. Gwen Spider looked at him for a moment, then quickly turned her head. Okay, you take a rest, and then continue to find the next target." Peter nodded, feeling a little regretful. He could feel that Gwen Spider should have something else to say. What she really wanted to tell him was probably not the stories she told in the subway. But she didn't want to say it, and Peter couldn't force it. To put it bluntly, they were not familiar enough to talk about everything before. It's just that he was a little puzzled, what was more unspeakable than the stories she told? The stories that Gwen Spider told earlier actually treated him as a companion. But this partner should only be brought because they have similar abilities, belong to the kind, and have all fallen into foreign lands. There is still a lot of difference between this and a real friend. Pedro was waiting for the day when Gwen Spider would speak out on his own initiative. In fact, Bede did not consume much energy in his actions just now. After a few minutes of rest, he was back to normal. Then, he said hello to the Gwen Spider and started moving again. There have been no similar cases since then. In the whole morning, he just saved a child who was almost hit by a car, helped an old lady to cross the road, and then helped a delivery boy who was almost overtime because of a traffic jam. There are also gains. The grandmother who was helped across the road insisted on buying him something to thank him for his contributions to the community. Bee knew it was Granny who thought he was the ultimate spider. But the kindness was hard to come by. In the end, Bede thanked the ultimate spider silently in his heart, and accepted the meat pie invited by the grandmother. Flushing is an Asian immigrant district in New York, and this meat pie shop is from Hangzhou. Open, based on the original meatloaf, it incorporates Western flavors and is very popular with the locals. Mr. Spider, our whole family really likes you. While the meatloaf was baking, the old woman held Bede's hand and talked to him with a smile. Haha, that's great, Bede laughed, feeling warm in his heart. Being able to be recognized for one's efforts is the greatest affirmation and the best reward. After saying a few words, the old lady changed the topic and said angrily, "Yesterday it was said on TV that Spider-Man is dead. I asked Jalad, and Jalad said that was just what those unscrupulous reporters said. I was so angry. We didn't even eat much dinner. How could they talk nonsense about such things? They are really unscrupulous journalists." Hearing this, Bee didn't know how to reply. Because what the news said was true, the ultimate spider was really dead. But he could tell that the old lady really liked Spider-Man. That Gerard was supposed to be the family that lived with her. Probably because of this, so I didn't tell the old man the truth. For some reason, he thought of Aunt May when she was sad. Thinking about it, Bede smiled, and put his other hand on the hand that the old grandma was holding him, and said with a smile, "Grandma, don't you think I'm doing well here? It doesn't matter what they say. Yeah, it's great that you're doing well." The old woman laughed heartily. After a while, the meatloaf was ready. After thanking the granny, Peeta took the meatloaf back to the rooftop, where Gwen Spider was waiting for him. Gwen Spider didn't wear a mask, probably because wearing a mask was uncomfortable. In fact, Bee didn't like wearing a mask when he was fine. But for some reason, he felt that Gwen Spider looked at him with envy now. "What are you envious of? Meatloaf?" Bede was a little puzzled, but he was not a stingy person, and stretched out his hand. "Hey, do you want to eat it? It smells delicious." I won't eat it, you can eat it." Gwen Spider hesitated, shook his head, and added, "Grandma bought this for you. But this meatloaf is very big, I ate too much for breakfast, and I can't eat it," Bede said with a bitter face. "Wasting food is a very shameful act, Gwen, you don't want me to become a bad guy who wastes food, do you?" "Ah!" Gwen Spider didn't expect this to be related to the villain. She said angrily, "Do you think I'm a child? What do you mean by your coaxing tone like a child?" "Hey," Peeta smiled, without any embarrassment. He just saw Gwen Spider's closed self, a look that no strangers should enter, so he couldn't help but want to tease her. But he really didn't talk about it. Stretching out his hand to tear it, Pete tore the meatloaf and the wrapping paper in half, and handed half of it to Gwen Spider. "It's your reward for helping me complete the assessment." Then I reluctantly accepted it. Gwen Spider hesitated for a moment, then took half of the meat pie and took a bite. Looking at her, she seemed a little excited. "Strange, is it so delicious?" Pete muttered to himself, and also took a bite of the meatloaf in his hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 24. Oops, it and number 039, a heart-wrenching feeling. Chapter 24. Oops, it's a heart-wrenching feeling. To be fair, this meatloaf does taste pretty good. It not only retains certain elements of Hangzhou, but also makes adjustments to better suit the tastes of Yingguo people. It is not unreasonable to be able to sell so hot. However, to say that it is delicious in the world, it is not considered. Anyway, Bede feels that it has reached the level of delicious. He couldn't understand what Gwen Spider was getting excited about. However, what he didn't know was that what Gwen Spider was excited about was not the taste of the meatloaf itself, but the meaning it symbolized. This meatloaf is actually not big, in fact, it is only the size of a palm. Half a patty and it was gone in no time. After crumpling up the wrapping paper that wrapped the patty, Gwen Spider seemed to have made some sort of decision. "Would you like to hear my story?" Gwen Spider said. Pedro was taken aback for a moment, and then he felt slightly happy. He had been waiting for this sentence for a long time. "Speak, and listen carefully." Later, Gwen Spider told her story. In her world, becoming Spider-Man is actually not a pleasant thing. Before gaining the ability, her life was not good. Her father is the chief of the New York City Police Department and has a high position, but he has little time to take care of her. So she fell in love with music, formed a band with a few friends, and became the drummer of the band. Her grades can be said to be a mess, and her interpersonal relationships are pitifully miserable. And after gaining the ability, the actual situation didn't get much better. It even got worse. She uses her abilities to help others, but those people think she is a masked person and don't want to see her. Sometimes she destroys something by fighting the bad guys, and they put it on her head, thinking she is also a destroyer. Gradually, Spider-Woman became an unpopular existence in her world. But so far, it's been fine. What really broke Gwen Spider was what happened later. Her childhood sweetheart Peter Parker, because of being bullied all the year round, has the psychology of revenge. So he made a mutated lizard potion and became a lizardman after injection. In order to prevent the lizard man from hurting others, she resolutely stopped him, and then discovered the other party's true identity. Peter Parker, on the other hand, died in her arms due to severe physical trauma after the effects of the potion wore off. This scene happened to be seen by her father. Her father preconceived that it was Spider-Woman who killed Peter Parker and issued a warrant for her. Since then, Spider-Woman has completely become an existence that everyone shouts and beats. A suspected murderer. No one recognizes her anymore. No one understands her. No one likes her. Even she herself felt that she was an ominous person. But she did not give up. From the death of her friend Peter, she realized the truth that with great power comes great responsibility, and convinced herself to become a night-knight with a double life. For this, she paid a lot. Due to her crime-fighting activities, she was often late to her band's rehearsals. So she fell out with her bandmates and quit the band. At this time, she seemed to be abandoned by the whole world, becoming the loneliest person. Even if he was injured, he could only silently lick the wound in a dark corner. The two-sided life gradually seems to have become one-sided. Both Gwen Stacy and Spider-Woman have become forgotten by the world. Loneliness is like a huge palm, closing her in the palm, oppressing her so that she can't breathe. Until she accidentally came to this world. In this world, she met a group of similar with the same ability as her. This allowed her to rediscover the feeling of having a companion. But the shadow of past experiences made her afraid of this feeling. She is afraid that her unknownness will bring disaster to these companions who have finally met. So she kept Bede and the others at arm's length. Watching them laugh, she laughed together in her heart from a distance. Seeing them making trouble, she was also envious in her heart, but she didn't dare to come forward to join them. Suddenly Bede realized. No wonder Gwen Spider has been acting so strange before. However, he understands the feeling. It's not that he feels the same way, but when he watched the 1994 Spider-Man anime, the 94 Spider-Man in it had a similar situation. 94 Spider-Man is always inexplicably blamed for various coincidences. For example, it was clear that Mobius stole his blood samples for experiments and turned into a vampire, but he was framed as the one who kidnapped Mobius, and was even hunted down by the Punisher for this. Just thinking about it, you can feel the difficulty of that situation and the torment in your heart. 94 Spider-Man is at least an adult man with rich social experience, and he has relatives and friends such as Aunt May, Mary Jane, Dr. Connors, and Dr. Maria to help him. As for Gwen Spider, there is only herself. And she is only 17 years old this year. Thinking of this, Bede's heart was filled with pity for the Gwen Spider. He looked at the profile of Gwen Spider. Gwen Spider also looked at him at this moment. The four eyes met, as if there were slight ripples in a calm pond. Gwen Spider moved closer to Bede. "Can you lend me a shoulder?" Bede hesitated, then nodded, "Of course." There seemed to be a faint fragrance coming from the nostrils, but there was no distraction in Bede's heart. "Gwen. Okay. I will be your friend from now on." "Ah. From now on, first friend. Why the first one?" "Because I will take you to see more worlds, more beautiful scenery, and make more friends." Gwen Spider's face turned slightly red and she smiled, "I'm looking forward to it." Seeing the girl's shy look, Peeta's heart beat violently. Oops, it's a heart-wrenching feeling. And at this moment, as if sensing Bede's strangeness, Gwen Spider's face also turned red visibly to the naked eye. Seeing this scene, a sentence emerged in Bede's mind unconsciously: "There are not many truths in the world, and a woman's blush is worth a long paragraph of dialogue." Neither of them spoke, just stared at each other for a long time. Eventually, Peeta felt he couldn't take it any longer. If this stalemate continues, he may really be about to make some rude move. Cough, have you rested yet? How about I continue to patrol? Peeta withdrew his hand and said with some embarrassment. Well, go ahead, I'll always be by your side and watch over you. Although Gwen blushed, she seemed much more frank. This has something to do with the personality of the individual, and it is also affected by the environment to a certain extent. However, the throbbing just now made Bede feel a strange feeling towards the Gwen Spider in his heart. And he can feel that the same is true for Gwen Spider. End of this chapter. Chapter 25 Gwen and number 039, S Thoughts. Chapter 25 Gwen's Thoughts. In fact, by now, even though Gwen Spider didn't say it clearly, Bede already knew the reason why she approached him. Escape. From Gwen Spider's description, it is easy to guess that her life in her world was not pleasant, even very bad. He even had some doubts that if the Gwen Spider was allowed to continue like this, one day she would suddenly be unable to bear it anymore and Gwen Spider should also know her own situation. Originally, she couldn't do anything about it. After all, she couldn't really fight against the whole world. But this unexpected event brought her from her dark world to this strange world. And, it was a week ago. During this week, while Gwen Spider was investigating what happened to him, he was greedily enjoying a rare peaceful life. Here, even if she occasionally goes out wearing her spider suit and is seen by others, she is not greeted with abuse and slander. Compared with the original world, she found that this place was like heaven, so beautiful. This made her fall in love with this place unconsciously. Perhaps this is why, she obviously came a week earlier than Pete and the others, but she waited until Pete and the others were together before looking for a way to go back. Because subconsciously she doesn't want to go back at all. But it's a pity that these visitors from another world were instinctively rejected by this world. So, she had to go back again. So, when she accidentally discovered that Peeta seemed to have some kind of ability to avoid this kind of rejection, she was deeply moved. However, Gwen Spider obviously didn't know how to talk about it. And Bede himself was confused about his current situation. How does he know why he is not affected by rejection? The only thing he can think of is that he is from the real world, and this is the Marvel Universe. Maybe he himself is a unique individual. Therefore, his existence cannot be copied for the time being. But it cannot be copied is not equal to he is unwilling to try. Even out of a deep understanding of his own situation, he had to find a way to figure out what happened to him. For example, why he traveled through time, where did the spider that bit him in the real world come from, why was he given the ability of Spider-Man, etc. Besides, if his existence is really extremely special, it means that he will not be rejected by any world. At that time, the nickname Space-Time Spider-Man that he gave himself in order to deal with the Orlando police officer will have another meaning. A Spider-Man who can travel through different time and space and different parallel universes. The Marvel Universe is so big, he doesn't believe that he can't find a way to take people to travel freely together. Therefore, he boldly made a promise to Gwen Spider to show her more worlds, more beautiful scenery, and make more friends. As for her purpose, on the one hand, I feel sorry for Gwen Spider. A person who originally wanted to treat the world with light should not be repaid by the world with darkness. On the other hand, he has a showdown, he is greedy for others, he is lowly. Maybe he didn't mean it at first, but after talking to the Gwen Spider, he was really interested. It's not easy for a person to meet someone in his life who he likes, who doesn't dislike him, and who may even like him. Now that I have encountered it, I naturally have to find a way to try and work hard. He secretly made a decision in his heart. If he was sure that he really couldn't return to his own world, he might as well go directly to her world with Gwen Spider. It doesn't matter which world he stays in. It's also nice to go to the world of Gwen Spider. After having a more in-depth communication with the Gwen Spider, the atmosphere between the two became much better. The most intuitive thing is that the smile on Gwen Spider's face has become more. The girl's smile is like a bend of clear spring, just one glance, it's sweet in my heart. Bede was full of energy. In the next few hours, Bede dealt with some daily incidents one after another, but never encountered the same thing as in the morning. It feels like New York City today is quieter than ever. Lunch was settled at a burger joint on the side of the road. When going out in the morning, Aunt May stuffed two people with a $10 bill, which was enough for them to have a lunch. It's just taking the old man's money, which is quite embarrassing. But they had to take it, after all, they had no money. Gwen Spider used the money brought from his own world in the past week, but it was almost enough. This embarrassing situation made Bede think, if he plans to live in any world for a long time, he should find a way to find a stable job, or start his own business. In short, at least you need to be financially independent and take care of yourself. While being Spider-Man, you also have to take care of your personal life. You can't be like Toby Spider, who can't coordinate the affairs between the two identities and make your life a mess. It's not until you lose it that you start to regret it. And although this happened to Toby Spider, it was a wake-up call for Bede. By the way, if I join the Avengers, will I get a salary? Bede suddenly thought of a question. However, he quickly shook his head and gave up the idea. To join the Avengers, it is inevitable to deal with SHIELD, but he doesn't like this stuff. It's better to figure out a way to solve the economic problem by yourself. Bede was making plans silently in his mind while walking quickly through the city. Gwen Spider followed him. It is already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Not long ago, after confirmation from Gwen Spider and approval from Shadow Spider, Spider Pigman, and others, it was confirmed that Bede had completed his actual combat assessment mission. At the same time, the Shadow Spider also informed them that Penny and the Spider Mecha had finished the gadgets. So, he and Gwen Spider are now on their way back to Aunt May's house in Queen's Mountain. What are you thinking? When sitting on the subway, Gwen Spider would glance at Bede from time to time, seeing his pensive look, and finally couldn't help asking curiously. As soon as Bede saw her expression, he couldn't help but want to tease her again. He turned his head to look into Gwen Spider's eyes, and said seriously, "I'm thinking about our future." Gwen Spider? Her face suddenly turned into a burning cloud again, and she turned her head back, not daring to look at Pedro again. Bede smiled secretly, and said, "Cough, well, just kidding. Actually, I was thinking about another question." What's the problem?" Gwen Spider asked. Bede analyzed carefully. New York can be said to be Jinbin's base camp. We have been busy around here all morning. Do you think Jinbin has noticed us? End of this chapter. Chapter 26 The Deceptive Black Spider. Chapter 26 The Deceptive Black Spider. Seeing that Bede was really talking about business, the blush on Gwen Spider's face quietly dissipated a little, nodded, and said, "When Miles and Mr. Parker broke into the laboratory outside Kingpin, they should have already known we exist. Then why haven't they been bothering us?" Pedro asked. Gwen Spider was stunned by Bede's question. Yes. Why didn't Kingpin come to trouble them? Logically speaking, Jinbin and Spider-Man are deadly enemies, and the middle-aged Peter Spider and Little Black Spider lurk into his laboratory and steal the computer that stores the data of the collider. Even Gwen Spider beats up Lady Octopus. Counting new and old hatred together, the value of this hatred must be full, right? In addition, Kingpin's purpose in building the collider was to find his wife and son in the parallel world. But judging from his experiments again and again, the collider technology is obviously not mature yet. And now, there are several mature experimental subjects here, who were successfully brought into this world by the particle collider. If he can catch them, maybe he can get inspiration from them, so as to perfect the particle collider and achieve his goal. But Kingpin didn't do that. Even until now, there is no intention of coming to them at all. What do you mean? Gwen Spider had some guesses in her mind and turned to look at Bede again. Bede also looked at her and said seriously, "I wasn't sure before, but after this morning's activities and thinking about it carefully just now, I think Kingpin should have completely mastered the particle collider. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, he will conduct the next particle collider experiment." Gwen Spider also nodded, and Bede's thoughts coincided with hers. That's why he has no time to take care of us. Firstly, he is busy with experiments and does not want to spend extra energy to find us. Secondly, he has been able to. If you achieve your goal, there will be no need to worry about us anymore. Bede grinned. He doesn't want to come to us, but it's a pity that we have to go to him. After all, we still have a big debt to settle with him. Yet. Gwen Spider nodded heavily. At the same time, Queen Hill. Aunt May's house. Spider-Man is enjoying the tranquility before the big war. The Shadow Spider lay reclined on the sofa, holding a third-order Rubik's Cube in his hand, and was trying to restore it. There was a smiley face on the screen of the Spider Mecha, standing behind the sofa and watching the movements of the Shadow Spider. Spider Pigman is eating. This foodie spends his time shopping and eating every day. The middle-aged Peter Spider held a cup of tea in his hand, and was also drinking it slowly, looking at the coffee table in the living room, as if he was thinking about something. In fact, he emptied his mind and was in a daze. Penny was sitting alone on the small sofa, rubbing her shoulders like a little grown-up. Aunt May was carrying a tray with some freshly baked biscuits on it, and walked up to Penny. "Little Penny, it's really hard work, come and taste it." "Thank you, Auntie." Penny picked up a biscuit and showed a lovely smile. Aunt May responded with a kind smile, and then called the others to eat cookies. Looking at the little spiders in this room, she felt that her whole body was healed. Bang! A figure ran in panic from the street, ran all the way into Aunt May's house, and then rushed into the house through the door. The middle-aged Peter Spider was taken aback and almost knocked over the teacup in his hand. He turned to look at the little black spider who was holding the door frame with one hand and gasping for air, and complained, "Miles, what are you doing in this sudden surprise? Shadow Spider and others also stopped what they were doing and looked at Miles. "Uncle!" Little Black Spider gasped for air, with a very anxious expression on his face, but he couldn't say it at once. "Uncle!" The middle-aged Peter Spider was a little surprised. "Well, I am indeed old enough to be your uncle. Although I personally don't want children, it's not impossible to find a cheap nephew." Aunt May put the tray on the coffee table, picked up another glass of water, and walked towards the little Black Spider. "Myers, don't worry, sit down and talk slowly." Little Black Spider took the water from Aunt May and drank it in one gulp, then she felt better. He said eagerly, "My uncle, he turned out to be a prowler." Didn't Bede tell you about this?" Shadow Spider asked doubtfully. When Bede introduced the game version of Miles he knew before, he had already said this. "Ugh!" The little Black Spider was momentarily at a loss for words, and he just remembered this. It turned out that after a whole morning of training, he had basically mastered his abilities. At least he was able to stably launch spider silk, and coordinate the spider silk with his body to move quickly and become invisible. After feeling the same, the little Black Spider gave up the plan to continue training in the afternoon. He asked for a leave from his head coach, the middle-aged Peter Spider, and wanted to take advantage of this time to go home and have a look. "After all, I was still a child, and it was my first time to participate in such a battle, so I was very nervous. Moreover, seeing the death of the ultimate spider with his own eyes still caused a certain psychological shadow on him. Besides, Bede was still the main person responsible for shutting down and destroying the collider, and training the little Black Spider was just a precaution." With these thoughts in mind, the middle-aged Peter Spider approved his leave note. So, little Black Spider left Aunt May's house and went back to Brooklyn. He first went back home and secretly looked at his mother. "Then I wanted to go see my father at the police station, but unfortunately his father was on duty and I couldn't find him. So he went to the house of his uncle Aaron Davis. The relationship between him and his uncle Aaron is very good, it can be said that they can talk about everything. Of course, he wouldn't really tell his uncle that he had acquired the spider ability, he just wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with his uncle before the upcoming battle to ease his tension. However, at his uncle's house, he meets the Prowler. And the Prowler is his uncle Aaron. Panicked, the little Black Spider escaped from his uncle's house. However, even though he was invisible at that time, the sound of wind when he left alerted the battle-hardened Prowler immediately. The Prowler immediately gave chase. The two started a fierce chasing battle in the street, and staged a war between uncle and nephew that was not much different from father's kindness and son's filial piety. In the end, the little Black Spider managed to get rid of the Prowler's pursuit, and dared not stay outside any longer, and ran all the way to Aunt May's house. After listening to the little Black Spider's narration, the middle-aged Peter Spider's expression changed. "You just came here directly." Penny called out, "Idiot! Have you ever considered that he let you go on purpose so that he could follow you all the way to us?" The Shadow Spider was even more decisive. She put the Rubik's Cube into her arms and stood up straight away. "Pete, Gwen, where have you been? Something happened here, so you should be careful over there." Spider Pigman glanced at the bewildered little Black Spider, jumped off the sofa, and walked to the kitchen. "I'm going to wash the handle. This is combat etiquette. After all, I am a well-mannered spider." Thanks to Wandeo Ziobewen for the 6,100 starting coin reward. End of this chapter. Chapter 27 Bede and Gwen and number 039, S Battle. Chapter 27 Bede and Gwen's Battle. On the other side, Pete and Gwen Spider, who were still in the subway, also had a general understanding of the situation here. But the subway is already the fastest mode of transportation they can use. Other than that, there is no other way. Bede looked up at the sight above, silently calculating. At this time, Gwen Spider said, "There are about 10 to 13 minutes left." Bede looked at her in surprise. He heard Gwen Spider herself say that after the death of his good friend Peter, she didn't put much thought into studying. She was very bad at studying and thought she was a scumbag. I didn't expect it to be her so-called student, which is a humble way of saying it. Then you must be careful. With Jinbin's style, it is impossible to attack only our side. Shadow Spider said. Bede and Gwen Spider nodded together. We will pay attention, and if there is no problem, we will come back as soon as possible. After a few minutes, Bede and Gwen the Spider just got off the subway. The moment they stepped out of the subway, the spider sense started to warn them frantically. Without saying a word, the two avoided each other, and quickly found the source of the warning. A group of gangsters, wearing fancy clothes and holding various weapons in their hands, surrounded them from all sides. Reminiscent of the news from the Shadow Spider and the others more than 10 minutes ago, the two of them quickly knew that this must be Jinbin's handwriting. As the underground king of Jinbing, New York, it is not too easy to drive such a group of punks. And the purpose is also obvious. Just to hold them both. Worried about things over there, Peeta and Gwen Spider didn't hesitate, and went straight to work. After a whole morning's actual combat assessment, the two have cultivated some tacit understanding, although B is doing most of the work and Gwen Spider is watching. Bede ejected and came to the side of a young gangster. He whipped the man with a whip leg and whipped him away. He flew 4 or 5 meters and stopped after hitting the pillar in the middle. Bede's shot was somewhat measured, probably to injure this guy and temporarily lose his fighting power, but it was not fatal. Then, he dropped his feet to the ground, lay down on his stomach, and avoided the machetes and baseball bats coming from both sides. He crossed his hands in front of his chest and shot out a stream of spider silk. Snapped! Snapped! 2 strands of spider silk hit the faces of the two punks on both sides at the same time, and exploded to form a spider web. The impact force generated when the spider silk is formed is still a bit painful when it hits the face. But most importantly, it seriously obstructs their line of sight. Both of them unconsciously reached out to grab the spider webs on their faces. And at this moment, Peeta pressed his hand down, and 2 spider threads shot out again, sticking to one of their feet. He jumped slightly and pulled hard at the same time. Bang! The 2 unlucky ones were pulled and slammed into each other violently, and a scene of meat and chicken was staged. Still a double. B seemed to hear the sound of an egg breaking in the air. The 2 unlucky ones who had lost their eggs turned into 2 boiled prawns, threw their weapons aside, clutched their private parts and wailed endlessly. Enemy -2. Swish! Another 3 or 4 punks waved their weapons and surrounded Pete. They looked at Bede's figure in mid-air, about to fall, and there was no place to hide. And there are still 4 people on my side. 4 versus 1, this wave feels stable. However, at this moment, Peeta shot out a spider thread from his right hand, which stuck to the ceiling of the subway station, directly stopping his falling figure. He swayed and drew an arc in the air. Bang bang bang! Amidst the 3 muffled physical impacts, the 3 punks were knocked out and fell to the ground. As for the last one, B decided to give him a little favor. So he landed next to the little bastard, first punched him in the stomach, made him retch, and then wrapped the other end of the spider silk around his body a few times. As soon as his hand was released, the man was lifted 2 meters high by the spider silk. Just when Bede's side was going well, there was a sudden exclamation from Gwen Spider's side. Peeta quickly turned his head to look, only to find that there were countless colorful mottled squares on Gwen Spider's body. It's a rejection reaction. It happened at this time. Gwen Spider should have come to a little gangster just now, and was about to attack him. But because of the rejection reaction, her movements were completely interrupted, and she fell directly from the air and fell to the ground. But the little gangster, after being stunned for a moment, waved the knife in his hand and slashed at the Gwen Spider's neck. CNMs. Bede even uttered a beautiful sentence in his mother tongue in desperation. He gave up this side without hesitation, shot out violently, and slammed into the little gangster's body fiercely. This blow was Bede's angry blow. Although he still controlled his power subconsciously, it still exceeded the limit that ordinary people could bear. The little gangster was hit and flew at least 10 meters away, sliding and rolling all the way, and finally fell to the ground with no idea of life or death. It is estimated that even if he is saved, he will already be semi-disabled. But at the moment Pedro couldn't care less. If he hadn't taken action just now, Gwen Spider might have died under that knife. But even so, the knife still cut through her arm, leaving a wound on her arm. Seeing the blood spurting out and dyeing the Gwen Spider's suit red, Bede was extremely panicked. He has not learned any first aid. And even if Spider-Man's physique is extraordinary, something will happen if he bleeds all the time. At this moment, a flash of inspiration flashed in his mind, and he suddenly remembered the emergency treatment of the wound by the Garfield spider in the movie. In The Amazing Spider-Man 1, Garfield was accidentally injured by the old man's ignorant men, and a wound appeared on his foot. In order to prevent the wound from affecting his activities, he used spider silk as a bandage to temporarily seal the wound. When you think about it carefully, this does make some sense. In order to make his own spider silk, he asked everyone about the synthetic formula of spider silk. Among them, Pan and I, who used high-tech to synthesize spider silk, told him, the spider silk solution is actually a kind of artificially manufactured nano-substance, and it is generally liquid. But in addition to those who cannot meet the conditions because of their backward technology, there are some Spider-Man, such as a genius girl who does not want to be named, who will choose to use high technology to further compress the spider silk solution to the subatomic level. Afterwards, when in use, a variable frequency current is radiated through the spider silk emitter switch, which activates the spider silk container and releases nanomaterials. The nanomatter will again change from subatomic to atomic, and then from the atomic to gaseous, and then the spider silk gas will be violently rubbed against the atmosphere at a very high speed, and the heat will cause the nanomatter to change from a gas to a liquid, and from a liquid to a solid. In fact, a solution of spider silk compressed to the atomic level is quite sufficient. Most Spider-Mans use this liquid spider silk solution. End of this chapter. Chapter 28 New Skill Get. Chapter 28 New Skills Get. Generally, there are 2 tubes in the spider silk launcher for the left and right hands, and 4 or 5 tubes in the belt on the body, so that it can last for a long time. But if it is further compressed to the subatomic level, not only can it be reduced in size and packed into a small coin-shaped container, which is convenient for carrying, it can also increase the reusability rate and prolong the use time. Frequent replacement of silk solution, etc. There are many advantages. The Spider-Man who have mastered this technology include Spider Mecha Girl Penny, the late Ultimate Spider-Man, the blonde Peter Parker, and the Dutch Spider that Bede saw in the movie. The Dutch Spider won the title of Iron Man. After receiving the support, the liquid spider silk solution originally prepared in a small beaker was replaced by a coin-shaped spider silk container. In fact, that was what contained the subatomic spider silk solution. It's only the size of a coin, but it's as effective as 4 or 5 tubes of liquid atomic level spider silk solution. Bede's suit was made in the Ultimate Spider's secret base using Ultimate Spider's equipment, and was made by Penny. So the spider silk launcher and spider silk solution he used are naturally high-tech versions. Theoretically speaking, the spider silk formed rapidly from the subatomic level should be safer, non-toxic, and sterile than the spider silk formed from the atomic level used by Garfield spiders. It's perfect for dressing up wounds temporarily. Bede then sprayed a few globs of spider silk on the Gwen Spider's wound, and the effect was immediate. The wound was quickly blocked, and the blood stopped flowing. But he knew it was just a stopgap measure. After all, the wound was not sterilized, and now it is just to keep it from bleeding. Thinking about it, Bede picked up the Gwen Spider, jumped to the ceiling, and quickly used spider silk to weave a large web between the ceiling and the load-bearing column, and placed the Gwen Spider on it. Roughly estimated, a total of more than 30 punks came. He and Gwen Spider had just solved 15 of them. There was about half left. Gwen Spider's injury made Pete a little annoyed. The strength in his hands also increased a bit. The previous strength probably only caused these people to temporarily lose their combat effectiveness, and left some minor and serious injuries along the way, so that they could learn a lesson and behave well in the future. But now, every time he punches, these people can lose a few teeth or break their ribs. I estimate that I will have to stay in the hospital for several months after the incident. Anyway, dealing with these people are just gang members. Even if the attacks are occasionally more severe, Bede doesn't have much psychological burden. Obviously, while he was being trained by the Shadow Spider, he was also influenced to a certain extent by his envious character. Shadow Spider's title of the Punisher in Spider-Man is not for nothing, which is enough to explain his behavior style. Fortunately, Bede wasn't as vicious as the Shadow Spider. After all, he didn't have the growth environment like the Shadow Spider, let alone the awareness of the Shadow Spider. Under Bede's almost full firepower, the remaining dozen or so people were dealt with by him within a few minutes. Bede tied them all together with spider silk and threw them on the ground. I believe that the news of Spider-Man subway station fighting gangs has already spread in New York City, and soon, police officers will come to take over these guys. Although these people did not hold guns, they fought with weapons and tried to hurt innocent citizens, and jail time is inevitable. Bede didn't care about them anymore. He came to the cobweb he had made again, and as soon as he got up, he saw a pair of beautiful eyes staring at him. "Gwen, how are you?" Bede asked concerned. Gwen Spider blinked and said, "It's completely healed. Can't you tell, you are very good at dealing with wounds. Also, your combat level has also been greatly improved." As he spoke, he swung his arms as if showing off. Pete probed to check the wound on Gwen Spider's arm, and it was true that there was no more bleeding. He frowned, not sure whether this was good news or bad news. In terms of the recovery ability of spider genes, if the wound is not deep, it is normal to recover quickly. But the wound was a knife wound, but it had not been disinfected. If it continues like this, I really can't say whether I will get tetanus or something. "Gwen, wait here for a while, I'll get some alcohol and disinfect it." "Hey!" Gwen Spider wanted to stop him, but after Pedro finished speaking, he jumped out of the spider web and left here. Looking at the back of Bede disappearing on the escalator, for some reason, Gwen Spider felt his heart was enveloped by a huge mass of warmth. Then, a sweet smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. It's such a great feeling to be cared about. Bede came back not long after he went out. An emergency medical kit was also brought back. This is from the staff in the service area of the subway station. Originally, what he meant was that he only needed some disinfectant, iodine, alcohol, etc., and added some bandages. But when the other party saw that Spider-Man wanted it, he knew that he was using it to save people, so he didn't say anything, and just gave him the whole bag. The other party even asked him if he wanted to help. The staff here have learned some training in emergency treatment of trauma. After thinking about it for a while, Bede still politely refused. He wasn't sure if Gwen Spider would let someone else handle it. Although accepting more help from others and feeling the kindness of others may bring some healing effects to Gwen Spider's mind. But Bede also knew that some things should not be rushed. Now, let Gwen Spider come out of the self-enclosed world bit by bit. Moreover, when he checked the wound just now, he found that the wound was actually not as deep as he imagined. "I was just worried that tetanus would cause wound infection, so I needed to disinfect it. Besides, they were still in the subway station, if they really needed help, it would be fine to take Gwen Spider there." Bede returned to the web around the corner again and collided with the Gwen Spider's eyes again. There seems to be some faint pink breath in the air. And the source seems to be from the slightly flushed pretty face of Gwen Spider. At this moment, if you look carefully, you will find that those blue pupils are all Bede's figure. Bede didn't notice this. He asked the Gwen spider to straighten out the arm on the injured side, and carefully fastened the spider silk on it. It is difficult for normal people to deal with this kind of spider silk. However, Spider-Man can use biostatic electricity to absorb spider silk in their hands. The power of biostatic electricity is much greater than the adhesive force of spider silk. Bede was a little worried that the Gwen spider would be in pain, so he just stuck a finger on the spider silk and peeled it off bit by bit. "Gwen, does it hurt?" Pedro suddenly raised his head and asked. Gwen spider's eyes moved away subconsciously, like a frightened deer. But she quickly regained her composure, and said, "No, it's okay, just come here." Oops. End of this chapter. Chapter 29. Chapter 29. While the Gwen spider was talking, Bede suddenly pulled out the entire spider silk with a strong force. It turned out that a part of the spider silk was bound together with the blood, and if it was buckled little by little, it would undoubtedly increase the duration of the pain. He could only be cruel, the long-term pain would be worse than the short-term pain. Gwen spider gave him a resentful look, but didn't blame him or say anything. She has closed herself for a long time and is not good at dealing with people, but it doesn't mean she is stupid. On the contrary, Binks-Yu, who was smart, guessed Bede's intention at once. So far, Pedro has completely stripped off all the spider threads. Following that, the wound below was also completely exposed. The first thing he saw was some clotted blood. Bede took out a sterile gauze from the medical bag, moistened it with some povidone iodine, and gently wiped off all the blood. The skins of the two are only tightly attached to each other through a thin layer of gauze, and they can feel each other's temperature. Feeling the warm fingers brushing against his skin again and again, Gwen spider's face became increasingly rosy. She looked down at the man who was cleaning his wound seriously, with clumsy techniques, but carefully controlled his strength, for fear that she would suffer more pain. Her heart seemed to be soaked in a honeypot, from top to bottom, from left to right, it was all sweet. An unprecedented sense of happiness hugged her tightly, and even made her forget her physical pain. During this period, Pete was actually involved in the wound a few times because he accidentally used too much force. But apart from the involuntary exclamation just now, the Gwen spider never made any painful sound. Let Bede blame himself while lamenting Gwen spider's strength. In fact, he felt that the state of Gwen spider was a bit strange at this time, but he couldn't tell what was so strange. How could he have known that his act of caring had quietly opened a heart door on the girl's shell that had originally wrapped him up layer by layer? At this moment, this heart door is the connection between the girl and the world. And his figure is standing on this heart door. Just like what was said in the 2003 movie Too Little No Gas directed by Yang Samuel, good love is when you see the whole world through one person, and bad love is when you give up the world for one person. At this moment, Gwen spider was absolutely convinced that what she met was a good love. It was the boy in front of me who suddenly came to him, lit a lamp for himself in the dark, and then he smiled and said to himself, "I will show you more worlds, more beautiful scenery, make more friends." Thus, the world lights up. It's because he is bright. After cleaning up all the blood that was flowing nearby and had begun to become sticky, Pete threw aside the few pieces of dirty gauze in his hand, and then took out the normal saline. You can use iodophor or alcohol to disinfect near the wound, but you cannot pour these disinfectants directly on the wound. He still understands this. As for where he got it from, before time traveling, he had seen a movie called The Unknown. In it, when the naive Lee Hagen was disinfecting his elder brother's glasses, he used alcohol and almost sent him away. At that time, he felt strange when he saw it, because he had heard that alcohol had a sterilizing and disinfecting effect before, but he had never heard anyone say it was so painful. After doing some research, I found out that normal disinfectants are only used to inhibit bacteria on the skin around the incision, but the inside of the wound still needs to be cleaned with saline. He's not sure, though, whether washing a wound with saline is much of an irritant. Gwen spider had been watching him, and immediately understood what he was worried about from the movement of his sudden pause. "Don't worry about me. Treat the wound as soon as possible. We still have to go to Aunt May's house to help everyone." Pedro nodded, and his heart tightened. Since just now, there has been no news from there in the headset, making Bede feel very anxious. However, the combat power over there is not weak. There are experienced middle-aged Peter Spider and Shadow Spider, the powerful Spider Ham, and the clever Spider Girl Penny. It stands to reason that there will be no accidents. To put it bluntly, Jin Bing is just a street boss. Compared with those really fierce purple sweet potato spirits, Goddess of Death, Uncle Tun, and so on, that's not Mao. However, he still sped up his movements a little. He first patted it with a piece of gauze to prevent the saline solution from leaking everywhere in the suit. Then, he looked up and saw that the Gwen Spider was getting ready, and Pedro began to clean the wound. When saline was poured on the wound, he could feel the muscles in the Gwen Spider trembling unconsciously. Obviously, there is still a lot of excitement in this. But she insisted on not saying a word, not wanting to add unnecessary psychological burden to Bede. But every muscle twitch made him feel distressed. Fortunately, although the wound looked deep and long, it shouldn't be too serious. It was cleaned up in a short while, and bright red blood came out again. This is a good thing. It can bring out some bacteria that may have been produced when it was not treated just now. Bede quickly wiped those all off, too. After cleaning the wound. At this moment, he could finally see the original appearance of the wound. There is a gap about 1 finger long and 2 centimeters wide on the arm of the battle suit, which is the hideous wound inside. The wound is about 5 millimeters deep, which is the result of being pushed a lot by B. It's hard to imagine what would have happened if it had been cut down at that time. Although I have known her experience over the years from the description of Gwen Spider, it is still hard to imagine how cruel the environment made a 17-year-old girl become so strong and brave. A normal girl would cry for a long time with a cut on her hand. But she remained silent and just watched him treat the wound without crying or complaining. Just endured everything silently. Pity for the girl in front of him subconsciously rose in Bede's heart. The blood-red granulation was particularly eye-catching against the fair skin. But probably Spider-Man's enhanced physique is at work, and some of the inside have been glued together. After taking a closer look, he breathed a sigh of relief, raised his head and said with a smile, "It seems that the injury is not as serious as imagined." Yet. Gwen Spider nodded and smiled. Pedro took out another piece of clean gauze from the medical kit and quickly covered the wound. Then I wrapped it with a bandage again. Because it is not very good at knotting, knotting is also a matter of knowledge. If the knot is too tight, it will affect blood circulation, and if it is too loose, it may continue to bleed. So Bede simply sprayed a few strands of spider silk on it. The spider silk is grid-like, breathable, and tight, which should be just right. "How is it?" Pete looked at Gwen Spider expectantly and asked. Gwen Spider's face was as red as a red-hot cloud, and she swung her arms pretending to be relaxed, and said, "It's handled well, thank you Bede." Seeing this, Bede also showed a happy smile unconsciously. "As long as there is help, then I will rush back first, why don't you rest here for a while?" End of this chapter. Chapter 30 Returning to the main battlefield. Chapter 30 Return to the main battlefield. By the time everything was packed up, nearly 10 minutes had passed since they got off the bus. He was also a little worried about the situation over there. "We should have given everyone a communicator in the first place, so there is no need to be like this now." As for the previous communication, it was directly connected to the computer in the underground spider hole of the Ultimate Spider, and the only 2 communicators were given to Pete and Gwen Spider for the convenience of communication. That is to say, if no one is at the computer, they will not be able to communicate with it. Including the time before, a total of nearly 10 minutes have passed, and there has been no news from there. They don't know what is going on there at this time. Now that Gwen Spider's condition has stabilized here, he naturally wants to rush back to help as soon as possible. Gwen Spider shook his head, rejected Bede's proposal, and said that he would go with him. The reason is that she has been Spider-Woman in her own world for so many years, and she has been alone in the wind and rain. It's not uncommon to get some injuries. She doesn't think she is a delicate lady, it's just a wound. Now that it's been taken care of, it's nothing. Besides, I'm still your senior. Don't underestimate me. Gwen Spider jumped off the web, looked up at Pete and said. From Bede's point of view, it is condescending, and it happens to have a clear view of the scale of Gwen Spider. He quickly said in his heart, see no evil, and then jumped off the spider's web with a medical bag. In that case, let's go. He is also not hypocritical. Gwen Spider was right. She's been Spider-Woman many times longer than Bede. Such a small injury would not make her lose her fighting ability. I'm squirming, but it's a bit of a look. The big deal is to pay more attention to his side after joining the battle. After returning the medical kit to the staff in the subway station and thanking them, Pete and Gwen Spider left the subway station. The entrance of this subway station is less than 1,000 meters from Aunt May's house. At the speed of two people swinging spider silk and running at full speed, it only takes tens of seconds. In fact, when they came out, they saw a thin figure in a black spider suit being chased and killed by a figure in a purple suit. It's Miles! Gwen Spider shouted. I know, I'll save him. Bede responded and quickly flew out. At the same time, it shot a thread at the little black spider, and then pulled it hard. At this time, bang! A shot went off. Someone has been shot. But it wasn't the little black spider that was shot, but the prowler. By mistake, Bidna pulled, but seemed to have saved the prowler. He immediately turned his head to look at the place where the gunshots came from, but saw a burly man with two doors and a white suit standing beside an elongated car. Gold End. Prowler was not Kingpin's subordinate, why did he kill Prowler? Bede was puzzled. The time returned to more than 10 minutes ago. Aunt May's door. Bang! A slender figure fell from the sky and hit the cement floor in front of Aunt May's house, causing cracks in the ground. Looking carefully, what stood on the ground was not human legs, but a pair of soft tentacles that looked like octopus limbs. As the soft tentacles slowly contracted, the figure gradually landed on its feet and landed on the ground. It was a woman with an afro. She was wearing a green high-tech steel protective suit. Probably for the convenience of movement, her hair was tied back with a hair tie. She wore a pair of goggles on the bridge of her thin nose. It's hard to see her eyes clearly. Ms. Octopus. Olivia Liv Octavius. That is, Dr. Octopus of this world. In most of the worlds, Dr. Octopus appears as a man, but in this world, it is an original woman. But whether it's a man or a woman, Dr. Octopus is Dr. Octopus. A mad scientist with high technology and high intelligence. It's a nice place, let's have a good meal. Ms. Octopus looked inside the house through her goggles, and saw the middle-aged Peter Spider and several others through the window. Immediately, a sinister smile appeared on the corner of her mouth, like a cat playing with a mouse. Wow, there are so many Spider-Man. Sorry, did I disturb you? The appearance of Ms. Octopus makes the middle-aged Peter Spider and others feel threatened. Especially the middle-aged Peter Spider and the little black spider. When they went to the company on the outskirts of Kingpin to steal data, they met the octopus lady and were chased by her. Guys, it's time to live! Spider-Pigman shouted as he walked out of the kitchen with wet hands. His spider sense was indeed very sensitive, and in the kitchen he was well aware of the arrival of the octopus lady outside. Pete, how long will it take for you to arrive? The guests are coming, asked the shadow spider. On the other side, Pete and Gwen Spider, who were still in the subway, also had a general understanding of the situation here. But the subway is already the fastest mode of transportation they can use. Other than that, there is no other way. Bede looked up at the sight above, silently calculating. At this time, Gwen Spider said, "There are about 10 to 13 minutes left." Bede looked at her in surprise. He heard Gwen Spider herself say that after the death of his good friend Peter, she didn't put much thought into studying. She was very bad at studying and thought she was a scumbag. I didn't expect it to be her so-called student, which is a humble way of saying it. Gwen Spider didn't pay attention to this. His eyes flashed and he said, "It seems there is a third point." The screen returns to Aunt May's house. After hearing this, the middle-aged Peter Spider said, "There is only one person on the other side, how about we go out directly?" Before he could finish speaking, he heard the whirring of a helicopter overhead. The spider sense naturally appeared again. Directly above Aunt May's house, a helicopter slowly approached the ground from the air. Apparently, Ms. Octopus jumped from this helicopter earlier. And there should be more than just her inside. Sure enough, as the height of the helicopter dropped, a figure appeared again in the open door on one side. A man wearing a black suit with silver-gray skin like steel appeared among them. His name was Lonnie Thompson Lincoln, and he was one of the biggest underworld leaders in New York, and Kingpin's right-hand man. He was originally a black man, but because he suffered from albinism since he was a child, he was often ridiculed by the people around him. The cold growth environment shaped his cold personality. First, he used his strong body to blackmail his classmates in school. Later, his behavior was discovered by classmate Robbie Robertson. Robbie Robertson wanted to expose him, but was intimidated by him and had to give up. After that, he went further and further on the road of crime, named himself Tombstone, and continued his criminal activities for nearly 30 years. End of this chapter. Chapter 31. The talk collapsed. Is it my fault? Chapter 31. The talk collapsed. Is it my fault? The unbearable Robbie Robertson collected a lot of evidence and sent him to prison. But Robbie Robertson himself was implicated in prison for some reasons. Later, Tombstone was locked in a room filled with an antiseptic gas called Diox-3 to protect Robbie Robertson. This special chemical mutated his body, giving him indestructible skin, extremely high speed, and the ability to withstand extreme temperatures, huge impacts, and even large caliber bullets. The originally albino skin also turned into a metallic silver gray. Boom! Relying on his invulnerable body, the Tombstone jumped straight down from a height of more than 20 meters, and he made a big hole in the ground. But he seemed to be okay, patted the dust on the suit, walked out of the pit, looked at the spidermen in the room, and showed a cruel smile on his face. A group of spiders. I really want to pinch you one by one. Crush it and bury it in the ground. This is not finished. Immediately after the Tombstone, another green figure jumped off the helicopter. It was a strange man wearing a set of emerald green scorpion armor. His lower body was transformed into 4 mechanical feet like a scorpion, and a long mechanical scorpion tail followed behind him. From the cold light on the needle tip, it is not difficult to see that this mechanical scorpion tail needle is not only sharp, but also highly poisonous. The guy's name was MacDonald Gargan. Originally, he was a private detective hired by JJJ, the boss of the Daily Bugle, to investigate Spider-Man's true identity, but he was repeatedly frustrated. This not only disappointed JJJ, but also made MacDonald Gargan more competitive. So, JJJ used his contacts to buy him a high-tech scorpion combat suit from a certain laboratory. But I didn't expect this battle suit to be the same as Dr. Octopus's tentacles. They all have a shortcoming. They are directly connected to the central nervous system of the human spinal cord, so once something goes wrong, it will directly affect people. The scorpion suit directly affected MacDonald Gargan's mind, turning him from a private detective into a criminal. His nickname is Scorpion Man. In nature, scorpions are regarded as one of the natural enemies of spiders. For Spider-Man, Scorpion is also considered a more difficult opponent. Boom! There was the roar of a motorcycle in the distance, and a purple motorcycle roared towards it from a distance with a dazzling purple light. A weirdo with his own BGM and wearing a purple high-tech battle suit also appeared in front of everyone. This person is naturally the uncle of the little black spider, Prowler Aaron Davis. At this point, Kingpin's 4 major battles are about to begin. Looking at this posture, it seems that he wants to catch all the Spider-Mans in one fell swoop. Hey? What do you think about us? The Shadow Spider looked at the enemies outside the house, then turned to look at the middle-aged Peter Spider, and asked very darkly. Middle-aged Peter Spider, how about I go have a friendly talk with Liv? I'm still very confident about my masculinity. The Shadow Spider nodded. The two looked at each other tacitly. The middle-aged Peter Spider opened the door and walked out on his own initiative. Mr. Peter Parker. The little black spider reached out to pull the middle-aged Peter Spider. The middle-aged Peter Spider stretched out his hand to block it, and then touched his head. Miles, you stay in the room, I will be back soon. After that, he walked out. In fact, he came out to stall for time. Although there are 4.5 fighting forces in the room now, middle-aged Peter Spider, Shadow Spider, Spider Pigman, Spider Mecha Girl, and half a little black spider, based on their understanding of Kingpin, since the opponent if they are dispatched, they must have a plan. So just in case, they prepared to procrastinate as long as possible, waiting for Gwen Spider and Pete to come back. But there is no other good way to delay time. There was no choice but to sacrifice the appearance of the middle-aged Peter Spider. After a few steps down the steps, the middle-aged Peter Spider didn't get too close to Jinbing's 4 generals. He reached out and said hello to Ms. Octopus. Hi, Liv, how are you? Ms. Octopus looked at him with a half-smile. Liv is a name that can only be called my friend. Do you think you are familiar with me, Mr. Spider with a big belly? The middle-aged Peter Spider covered his heart with one hand and made an exaggerated heartache gesture. Oh! How could you say that? Have you forgotten that we are still in your laboratory? Wow, times 9. Upon hearing this, both the spiders and Aunt May in the house, as well as the other 3 Jinbin generals outside the house, all showed expressions of wonder. At this moment, there is no distinction between the enemy and the enemy. Because everyone is a melon eater. A vein popped up on Ms. Octopus's face. It seems that you miss it very much? Then why did you run away then? Why don't we go for a careful physical examination now? The middle-aged Peter Spider shook his head vigorously. Forget it, but if you don't mind, I can invite you to have a meal, watch a movie or something. Are you going on a date with me? Ms. Octopus had a shy look on her face. Yes, middle-aged Peter nodded matter-of-factly. Is that so? Ms. Octopus lowered her head slightly, as if she was really thinking about this question seriously. The next moment, her head suddenly lifted up, and the 4 white mechanical soft tentacles behind her moved accordingly. Her face was extremely gloomy, but I don't want to. I just want to catch you, tie you up in my laboratory, and study the secrets of you bit by bit. Ha ha ha. Call out. An octopus tentacle shot towards the middle-aged Peter Spider. The material of Ms. Octopus's mechanical soft tentacles is very unusual. At its shortest, it can be fully retracted into the armored container on her back, making her look completely normal from the outside. When stretched, it can extend more than 20 meters. This is an active nanometal synthesized by Ms. Octopus after studying the octopus in the sea. This metal has the ability to deform quickly in a short period of time, allowing equipment to be quickly shaped. But at the same time, it is a genuine metal with many metal properties such as toughness and solidity. Not to mention it is a cold weapon, even bullets cannot penetrate it. Ms. Octopus's sudden attack can be described as menacing. But for Spider-Man, it seems commonplace. The middle-aged Peter Spider turned sideways slightly, avoiding the blow. Regardless of the wall beside it that was scratched by the mechanical tentacles, it turned its head leisurely to greet the Shadow Spider and the others. It seems that the talk has collapsed, everyone is ready to fight. The Shadow Spider was a little speechless, your conversation skills are really top-notch. You're welcome, you're welcome. Although the middle-aged Peter Spider was embarrassed, he still responded bravely. This one is overnight code, thank you for your rewards, monthly tickets and recommendation tickets support, by the way, ask for another wave of tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 32 The Battle of the Spiders. Chapter 32 The Battle of the Spiders. At this time, the mechanical tentacles beside him suddenly retracted and rolled towards him, as if they wanted to roll him over. The middle-aged Peter Spider stretched out both hands, and at the same time grasped the fork at the end of the mechanical tentacles. I saw that the bifurcation of the mechanical tentacles actually looked like real octopus tentacles, soft and still moving. Hey, the middle-aged Peter Spider said with goosebumps, this thing is much more disgusting than the Dr. Octopus I know. As soon as this remark came out, Ms. Octopus was so angry that she wanted to kill her. Although she is a science geek, she is also a woman. How could she stand being called disgusting, disgusting, and disgusted? Call out! Another mechanical tentacle shot over. The middle-aged Peter Spider did not dare to take it lightly this time. After all, in his world, Dr. Octopus was a very difficult opponent. He also paid great attention to the person in front of him. The middle-aged Peter Spider jumped several meters away, avoiding the attack of the two tentacles. Afterwards, the two quickly started fighting. On the other side, after Ms. Octopus took the lead, several others also took action. The tombstone crossed his hands in front of him, and crashed into the wall facing the street with a bang. Dude, don't you think of yourself as a tank? Spider Pigman appeared next to the tombstone in a flash, raised his pig's trotters, and kicked him out with one kick. Fuck, my hoof, phew, my feet seem to be swollen. This guy is too hard. As he spoke, Spider Pigman's movements were not slow. He directly shot out a spider thread, quickly pulling his body closer to the tombstone. Humph, you still have to look at me. The Scorpion Man shook his head, and the mechanical scorpion tail needle behind him was raised high. A ball of yellow-green venom sprayed out from the mechanical scorpion tail needle. The venom ball hit the wall, instantly melting a big hole, and at the same time, the pungent smell spread into the entire room. The shadow spider's nose twitched slightly, and its face sank. Be careful, this venom ball contains aqua regia, which is extremely corrosive. You're quite knowledgeable. The Scorpion Man looked at the shadow spider and said proudly, this contains not only aqua regia, but also the Scorpion King's special neurotoxin, which is my exclusive secret recipe. Neurotoxin. The shadow spider was startled, and quickly grabbed Aunt May behind her, and ran to the backyard. Leave this to me, take this with you. After transforming into a spider mecha girl, Penny controlled the spider mecha, picked up the gadgets on the coffee table, and threw them to the little black spider. The little black spider quickly followed the shadow spider and ran towards the backyard. The spider mecha girl assumed a fighting stance, one hand turned into a sharp cutting disc, and attacked the Scorpion Man. Backyard. Boom. Shadow Spider held Aunt May's hand, and just as she was about to step out of the backyard door, her spider sense reacted violently. He stopped immediately. Immediately afterwards, 2 gunshots rang out. 2 bullet holes appeared in front of them. Aunt May, you stay here. The shadow spider let go of Aunt May's hand, and then said to the little black spider following behind, Miles, protect Aunt May well. Okay. The little black spider replied nervously holding the gadget. Shadow Spider nodded, took out his revolver, ducked, and left the house. To be honest, fighting Spider-Man is like lighting a lamp in the toilet, seeking death. Shadow Spider relied on the guidance of its spider sense to immediately discover the location of the 2 gunmen. He rolled out of the courtyard gate, and shot twice in the air. Snapped. Snapped. 2 bullets were fired from the revolver. Probably not even Kingpin, who arranged the 2 gunmen, would have guessed that there was actually a Spider-Man who could use firearms as weapons. The Spider-Man activities in the Ultimate World have been active for a long time, but they have always relied on spider silk and fists. It is amazing to move some hands and feet on the spider silk, and there has never been a time when he has a gun. How to say after all? In the modern Eagle country, there are two ways to treat thugs with guns and thugs without guns. If you are a thug with a gun, the police will first consider your threat level and then choose to kill you or persuade you to surrender. As for the extent of the threat, probably it's the skin color. The darker the skin tone, the darker the threat. As hell as this joke is, it's true. Of course, this is a bit of a stretch here. Other than that, it's masked. The level of threat from the masked one is not much different from the former one. Therefore, in order to avoid conflicts with the police, Spider-Man generally does not carry dangerous weapons. The 20-ton fist is actually dangerous. Moreover, as a good neighbor to everyone, Spider-Man also tries his best not to do something scary. A masked maniac with a gun and a masked man with bare hands. Think about it and know which one will be friendlier. However, the situation with Shadow Spider is different. His understanding of this world is not deep. So he had no scruples. The two gunmen were killed on the spot. However, the danger warning of the spider sensor did not dissipate. Shadow Spider immediately realized that Kingpin should have more than two gunmen nearby. In order to avoid involving Aunt May in the fighting, the Shadow Spider did not hesitate and ran away along the street. Sure enough, those threats followed him all the time. Aunt May's backyard. At this moment, only Little Black Spider and Aunt May are left. Aunt May looked at the trembling legs of the Little Black Spider, and shook her head slightly. She picked up a baseball bat from the side and put it on her shoulder, and said boldly, "I want to see who dares to break into my home. This is a serious violation of the law. If he dares to come, I will beat him to death." BGM suddenly sounded. A low humming sound came from above the two of them. The next moment, a big hole was torn open in the roof suddenly, and a purple figure rushed down. Look at his target, it is the Little Black Spider. Ah! The Little Black Spider screamed in fright. However, Aunt May had quick eyesight and quick hands. She pushed the Little Black Spider away with one hand and slammed the baseball bat on her shoulder with the other hand. Bang! The baseball bat and the metal uniform slammed together, making a loud thud. The figure didn't know if it was hit by a baseball bat, or if it suddenly changed its mind, and shifted slightly to the side in the air. Aunt May, who was originally exposed to the attack by pushing away the Little Black Spider, narrowly escaped the attack. However, the floor suffered. Boom! The prowler slammed into the floor, creating a large crater. But he stood up quickly as if nothing was wrong. The ferocious cloak-like costume, the oppressive purple color, and the low roar of the engine in the uniform during action make the prowler look like a demon crawling out of hell, which is extremely terrifying. "Get out of the way, I don't want to fight with the old lady," a deep voice came from under the prowler's mask. End of this chapter. Chapter 33. Chapter 33. But who is Aunt May? She is silently supporting her nephew Peter Parker, who has been Spider-Man for more than 10 years and has repeatedly confronted villains. How could she be frightened by a prowler? Without saying a word, she picked up the baseball bat and hit the prowler again. Prowler frowned, stretched out his left hand, and held the baseball bat firmly in his hand with the steel claw. "If you insist on learning a lesson, then I don't mind letting you taste it." As he spoke, he yanked the baseball bat. "Run!" Aunt May still clenched the baseball bat with both hands, allowing herself to be pulled by the power of the prowler, as if accepting her own death calmly. This scene deeply touched Little Black Spider's heart. He suddenly jumped up, and came to the prowler in a flash, clenched his fist and punched him in the face. Release! The prowler was directly beaten out, but he did obediently let go of the baseball bat in his hand. Aunt May fell to the ground. The prowler stood up again. He felt that the voice just now was familiar, but he couldn't remember where he heard it. But he didn't care too much, but looked at the little black spider, and said, "Isn't that all right? You know, my target is you, only you." Little black spider didn't reply. He was actually a little conflicted. On the one hand he wanted to recognize Uncle Aaron, on the other hand he was afraid that Uncle Aaron would know his hidden identity. He helped Aunt May up, glanced at the prowler, made a provocative gesture, and broke through the glass to escape. "Ha!" The prowler sneered, and followed him out of the broken window. Uncle Ci and nephew filial piety, the second round begins. The screen returns to the main battlefield. "Hey, Liv, seriously, how about we stop and rest for a while? Aren't you tired? Liv, did you make these tentacles yourself?" "How? I mean they look really good, awesome." "Wow, Liv, that move just now was really powerful, but it doesn't quite fit your image. I think you can be more gentle." While the middle-aged Peter Spider nimbly moved back and forth nearby, he continued to stimulate Ms. Octopus with flirtatious words, firmly attracting Ms. Octopus's hatred to him. His verbal harassment made the originally calm and composed octopus lady's face become increasingly gloomy. She said nothing, but the tentacle attack behind her became more and more fierce. It could almost be said that every move was powerful and deadly. Any object hit by her tentacles will be destroyed instantly. She even grabbed a street lamp with slates, stone bricks, green belts, and swung it at the middle-aged Peter Spider. In fact, there is also some discomfort in the middle-aged Peter Spider's actions. The discomfort mainly comes from his big belly. After separating from Mary Jane, he fell into a long period of decadence. Overeating and lack of exercise caused a significant decline in his physical fitness, and he seemed to be less agile in his actions. This put him in danger. Fortunately, the middle-aged Peter Spider has extremely rich combat experience. He was much older than the late Ultimate Spider in this world, and he had been Spider-Man for 22 years. In his life, he had faced countless enemies, but the one in front of him was a bit tricky at best. It's just that the middle-aged Peter Spider actually doesn't have much desire to do anything with Ms. Octopus. It's not that he covets the octopus lady's beauty or anything. It's because he thinks that he is a visitor from a parallel universe and cannot interfere with things in this world. It's not like he hasn't encountered such a thing as traveling through parallel universes before. When he was young, he also visited a universe in 2099, where he saw a stinky Spider-Man called Spider-Man 2099. Oh, that guy is really badass. The battle suit is made of anti-gravity material, and it can still fly. None of his materials can fly. No, he doesn't care whether it flies or not. Spider-Man can fly, is that plausible? Damn, I'm so envious. The middle-aged Peter Spider thought about it, with tears of envy shed from the corner of his mouth. The experience of traveling through parallel universes many times taught him that if it is not necessary, the impact on the original universe should be reduced as much as possible. Because of the impact caused by some visitors from different time and space, it may affect the stability of the original universe in severe cases, causing some very serious consequences. Therefore, the middle-aged Peter Spider's attitude towards Ms. Octopus is to procrastinate as long as she can, and never make a move. Lady Octopus couldn't hurt him anyway. The two seemed to be fighting fiercely, but in fact the injuries were to nearby ground, buildings, etc., and the actual damage suffered by both parties in the battle was approximately zero. The other side. Spider-Ham did not think as much as the middle-aged Peter Spider. However, from his fight with Tombstone, it is also obvious that he is absent-minded. Maybe it's because Tombstone's body is too hard. Every time Spider-Pigman hits him, he grins and jumps for a while, as if he's in pain. But at the same time, the movements of his hands and feet were not slow at all. He beat the Tombstone so hard that he was so angry and helpless that he had no power to fight back. He even had time to stuff his mouth with something to eat. I don't know where the pockets on its battlesuit came from, and where it took out so many things. The battle between the Spider Mech Girl and the Scorpion Man seemed to be evenly matched. The main reason is that the Scorpion Man is very insignificant. After he found that he couldn't seem to defeat the strange mecha opposite him in close combat, he stayed away and used the venom stored in the mechanical scorpion tail needle to attack them. Penny has not been a Spider Mech Girl for long, and is still in the learning stage. For a while, he was beaten in style by the Scorpion Man. While the Scorpion was hitting, his eyeballs were rolling around. He was wondering whether to continue as is, or wait for those guys to make a fool of themselves so that they could show off in front of the boss. The former is more stable because he knows why the boss asked them to come here. Dealing with these Spider-Man is not the intention is just to warn them not to cause trouble on their heads. As for the latter, you have to bear certain risks. He took the time to take a look during the battle and found that the other opponents seemed to be quite powerful, but the one in front of him seemed a little timid in the fight. I just don't know what this bulging mech is, but it still has a girlish voice, tisk tisk. Gargan, what are you doing? Hurry up and destroy your opponent and help Dr. Octavius. Just as the Scorpion was hesitating, the voice of his boss, Jin Bin, came from the headset. Hearing Jin Bing's displeasure, the Scorpion said cleverly, "Okay, good boss." He promised, and after spitting out a ball of venom again, he suddenly changed his target and attacked the middle-aged Peter Spider not far away. Thanks to Ku Tao Chuo Build for the 10,000 starting coin reward, allow me to work overtime and I should be able to issue one in the morning. End of this chapter. Chapter 34. Chapter 34. The middle-aged Peter Spider was chatting comfortably with Ms. Octopus, but suddenly the spider felt a violent tremor. He immediately dodged to the side instinctively. However, Ms. Octopus had already received the news of the Scorpion's sneak attack from the headset. She suddenly stretched out two mechanical tentacles, one swept over fiercely, blocking the way of the middle-aged Peter Spider, and the other grabbed his ankle. The yellow-green venom ball passed over the back of the middle-aged Peter Spider, and the highly corrosive aqua regia inside quickly dissolved his suit. Fortunately, he had just dodged and avoided most of the attacks, otherwise he would have suffered a big loss this time. However, after the neurotoxin in the venom ball touched the skin of the middle-aged Peter Spider, it began to penetrate into his body, making his body slightly sluggish. Snapped. The mechanical tentacles were raised high and hit the ground hard. Ow! The middle-aged Peter Spider screamed, and came into close contact with the ground. Hearing his voice, Ms. Octopus suddenly had both new and old hatred in her heart, and then slammed him on the ground a few times until the middle-aged Peter had spider eyes staring at him. Let him go. The Spider Mecha Girl blamed herself immensely in her heart. If she hadn't been negligent and gave the enemy an opportunity to take advantage of, Mr. Parker would not have been injured. She rushed over desperately, the metal gear in her hand spun at a high speed, cutting on the mechanical tentacles, bursting into clusters of flames. Just you! Ms. Octopus sneered, stretched out another mechanical tentacle, and attacked the Spider Mecha. Wow, isn't this good? A strange cry suddenly came from not far away. Then, a silver-grey figure was smashed over, sending the Scorpion Man behind the Spider Mecha who was about to launch another sneak attack directly flying away. At the same time, Spider-Ham rushed over, grabbed the mechanical tentacles, pulled back, and kicked Ms. Octopus in the face. Ah! Ms. Octopus screamed and flew backwards. Her mechanical tentacles maintained a neuron connection with her, and affected by this, they also loosened. The Spider Mecha Girl caught the middle-aged Peter Spider and said anxiously, Mr. Parker, how are you? The middle-aged Peter Spider covered his waist with his backhand and shouted, Oh! My back, my back! This guy is really poisonous, my back is burning hot. Spider-Ham checked the middle-aged Peter Spider's injury, then turned to look at the Scorpion. You guy, your shots are not as vicious as usual, and you are also vicious. If this is the case, Don't blame me for calling you with a big pig's hoof. Blind. After all, Spider-Ham jumped up. This time, he looked extremely serious. At the same time, the other side. The little black spider has been hunted down and is almost in dire straits. This is not surprising. He had just mastered the ability, and hadn't experienced any actual combat. And the other person is still his closest uncle, and he doesn't want to be an enemy of his uncle at all. Coupled with the Prowler's rich combat experience, he can often predict his actions. Soon, the little black spider was chased by the Prowlers to a rooftop. After a few more moves, he was grabbed by the neck by the Prowler and lifted up high. Prowler looked at this young man who was similar to his nephew, and said indifferently, "Originally these things have nothing to do with you, but the boss ordered to kill you, and he must kill you. If you want to blame, it's because you know too much bar." Looking at the ferocious Prowler mask, little black spider seemed to see the cold eyes of his Uncle Aaron. His heart was extremely flustered. He wanted to keep concealing his identity, but at this moment, he couldn't care less. He barely raised his hand, placed it on his head, and pulled the mask over his head. Click! The Prowler slowly raised his hand, and the hand he was about to kill the little black spider suddenly stopped in mid-air. Mimirs! Even through the mask, he could feel the shock in the Wanderer's heart, and the hand pinching the little black spider's throat unconsciously loosened a little. "Uncle Aaron." "It's me," the little black spider said with difficulty. The Prowler pulled off his mask and said in shock, "But this Myers, no, how could it be you? How could this be? Why are you?" Looking at the familiar and kind face, the little black spider unconsciously relaxed, and said, "It's a long story, but Uncle Aaron, can you let me go first?" Okay, the Prowler agreed. Just as he was about to put down the little black spider, Jinbin's voice came from the headset again, "Prowler, what are you doing? Kill that brat!" "Mr. Fisk, I..." The Prowler froze, and his expression changed rapidly. "What's wrong with you?" Jinbing's tone was cold. "This kid has seen everything. If he tells it, he will destroy me. He must be killed. Otherwise, I will kill you, and then kill him myself. You know, I always do what I say." Yes, the Prowler is still hesitating. After working for Jinbing for so many years, he knows Jinbing's cruelty. Once, he was not the king of the dark underground organization in New York. At that time, the New York underground world was full of heroes. And gold turned out. With his extraordinary mind and a pair of iron fists, he forcibly integrated the entire underground world of New York. It's not that there were no people who opposed him, but some of them were beaten into a puddle of mud by him on the spot, and some were thrown directly into the sea to feed the fish. Since then, there has been only one storyteller left in the New York underground world. Gold, and he is truly the new underground king of York. No one can refuse him. No one can ignore his threats. The Prowler knew that if he dared to refuse Kingpin's request at this moment, then tomorrow, he might see the bodies of his brother Jefferson Davis, sister-in L'Oreal Morales, and eldest nephew Miles. Don't doubt it, this is what the Kingpin can do. But how could he attack the person in front of him? The person in front of him is his nephew Miles, whom he regards as his own son. The Prowler was extremely entangled in his heart, and he remained in place in a daze. In the shadows in the distance, a car was parked. Although it is also an extended version, it is not the extended version of Lincoln that Kingpin usually drives. Mainly because the extended Lincoln was well known to the public, and there was going to be a murder here today, and he didn't want his apparent identity to be related to the murder. As for why the extended version is needed, he has fought all his life, so he can't enjoy it. Well, it's mainly because he has built his body up so much that he can't fit in an ordinary car, so only the extended version can fit him in. At this moment, through the car window, Jinbin looked at the figure of the Prowler and the little black spider on the roof in the distance, his face sinking like water. He never expected that the prowler, who used to listen to his words very much, would actually disobey his orders at this moment. Could it be that the brat has something to do with him? I was planning to post it in the morning, but I stayed up until 7 o'clock and didn't write much. End of this chapter. Chapter 35. Chapter 35. Jin Bin thought in his mind, but his hand movements were not slow at all. He casually took out a pistol from the cabinet on the side, opened the car window, and aimed at the roof in the distance. Since that guy doesn't dare to make a move, let me do it. Deal with you first, then kill him. Kingpin is very decisive and full of contempt for the little black spider. This is not surprising. He had watched the battle between the little black spider and the prowler just now, and the other party's combat reaction, approach to the enemy, etc. were no different from those of a rookie. Such an existence is completely unworthy of Jin and giving him much attention. Just find a few gunmen to have a cold shot secretly and that will solve the problem. In fact, judging from the other party's size, he was probably only a 16 or 17-year-old child. If the other party hadn't seen the scene of him executing Spider-Man, Jin Bin would not even bother to kill him for fear that he would reveal his true colors. The specially made pistol in Kingpin's hand was pointed at the prowler. This pistol is a specially made high-tech pistol that has been modified on the basis of the Desert Eagle, which has improved its power and accuracy to a certain extent. But correspondingly, its recoil was further increased. If it was an ordinary person, after firing a shot, his wrist would be shattered instead. But Kim is different. As a superhuman with 90% of his muscles, he can not only easily hold this super pistol called hand cannon with one hand, but even shoot it with one hand. Not only that, its bullets are also specially made armor-piercing bullets. It was specially made by Jin Bing when he was fighting Spider-Man before, in order to target this bug who was wearing a mask and looking for him everywhere. During production, factors such as the raw materials of the suit left over from the opponent's battle and the protection level of the suit revealed in some surveillance images were taken into consideration. It can be said that the special armor-piercing projectile fired by this gun is enough to be penetrated by a single shot even if it is some high-quality body armor. Even Spider-Man would never feel bad about being shot. On the roof, after a short period of hesitation, the prowler has made a decision. He decided to take it all by himself. Maybe he can choose to completely surrender to Jin Bin after this operation is over, so as to get his understanding or something. Thinking about it, the prowler pulled down the headband on the little black spider's head, completely covering his face. His expression was extremely complicated, and he didn't even know what to say to his nephew. They used to be very close, but now they belong to two hostile camps, light and darkness. Bang! At this time, there was a loud noise, and a ball of fire lit up from a distance. Immediately afterwards, a specially made armor-piercing projectile sprayed out from the muzzle and shot towards this side. The target was one of the two on the roof. The little black spider heard the noise and turned his head to look over there. At this moment, he only felt that the world slowed down countless times. He could clearly see a long pointed bullet flying towards Uncle Aaron. But there was nothing he could do. Move! Little black spider roared in his heart, struggling to control his body. But this shot was not aimed at him. The spider sense did not trigger the instinctive level, making his body's reaction speed much slower than his senses. He could only watch helplessly as the bullet kept bullying his Uncle Aaron. At this time, call out! A ray of spider silk suddenly shot from somewhere and hit the little black spider. A strong force came along the spider silk, pulling the little black spider a little further. The little black spider was caught in the hands of the prowler, and under the influence of this force, it was also shifted an inch to the side. Snapped! The armor on the prowler's chest was shattered, and the special armor-piercing rounds spun into his body. At the same time, a ball of blood burst out, instantly staining his chest red, adding a layer of bright red to the purple. The prowler's mind was in chaos. In fact, the first reaction when a person is shot is no reaction. Because the speed of the bullet is so fast that it has already entered another place before the body's own pain nerves transmit the pain in the corresponding part to the brain. Therefore, after being shot, it is actually like being bitten by a mosquito. I don't know if it's true or not. I checked the popular science video, it seems to be like this. It's just this bite, which will cause the muscles of the human body to trigger a self-reaction, causing people to experience stiffness and other effects unconsciously. A few seconds after being shot, those pains will quickly flood into my mind in an instant. If the willpower is weaker, you may even faint from the pain on the spot. That's exactly what the Prowler is doing at this time. His will was already very strong, but the special armor-piercing bullet fired by this special sand eagle almost instantly tore apart not only his armor protection, but also his body protection, breaking his chest and ribs. Maybe it penetrated the left lung or something. At this time, the Prowler was almost hit by this shot and lost the ability to stand up again. His limbs were limp on the roof, sliding down the slope of the roof. On the other side, the little black spider was stuck to the spider silk. After being pulled a short distance away, because the Prowler no longer held him, he was directly pulled off the roof. After he fell to the ground, he grabbed the spider silk behind him with his backhand, pulled it off, and then quickly ran towards the roof. Uncle Aaron, the little black spider panicked. Before falling from the roof, he saw his uncle get shot. On a rooftop in the distance, two figures suddenly jumped out. One was a man in a red and blue battlesuit with a big white spider mark on his chest. The other is a slim and fit woman wearing a black and white battlesuit. It is Pete and Gwen Spider who have returned from the wilderness. After the two had seen the situation clearly, Bee quickly moved towards the little black spider. Bede rolled over into the house and sighed inwardly as he watched the little black spider holding Prowler's head in his arms, pressing his injured chest with both hands and crying. Regardless of whether this Prowler is good or bad, but the other party is the uncle of the little black spider. Bede learned how to use it flexibly, pulled the little black spider's hands apart, and sprayed a few lines of spider silk on the wound, temporarily blocking the wound. At least on the surface, the blood will not continue to gush out. As for what's going on inside and whether he can be revived, it all depends on God's will. Bede reminded, Miles, call an ambulance quickly. The bleeding has stopped temporarily. Maybe it can be saved. But if it's late, it's really too late. The little black spider suddenly woke up. Yes. Ratchet. Thank you, Bede. He quickly turned downstairs and asked Aunt May to borrow the phone. Bee actually also has a mobile phone on his body, which he brought from his own world when he traveled. But the phone cards in the two worlds are not compatible, not to mention that they don't even have emergency calling authority. So there was nothing he could do about it. Cough. 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 The Prowler lying on the roof suddenly coughed violently. P noticed that his eyes seemed to open a little. The Prowler opened his mouth and spit out a simple letter pronunciation. Bede understood instantly. He squatted down and said, Don't worry, Miles is fine. He has already called an ambulance. If you don't want him to be sad, just stay alive until the ambulance comes to pick you up. Prowler looked at Bede through the gap between his eyelids. He opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. But Bede had already stood up and didn't want to care about him anymore. It was for the sake of little black spider that he stayed and said a few more words. Otherwise, he wouldn't bother to pay attention to this guy. He walked quickly to the edge of the roof. On the street below, Gwen Spider had been engaged in a fierce battle with Jin Bing at some point. End of this chapter. Chapter 36. Chapter 36. Jin is worthy of his title of the physically strongest man in the world, non-mutated. His iron fists can be wielded with great force. He punched the lamppost, and even bent the lamppost. Although the street light pole is hollow, it is also made of metal. How can a normal person bend it with a punch? Looking at Kingpin's unusual body shape, Bede doubted whether he was some sort of physically mutated mutant. After all, mutants are theoretically part of the Marvel worldview, and they also appeared in Spider-Man 94. Jin is not a mutant, but it is not impossible. If this is the case, it can also explain the problem that he can exercise his body into two doors. Although Gwen Spider said it was fine, she said it was fine. But the injured arm still had some impact on her actions, causing her to lose a lot of flexibility. After all, shooting spider silk relies on her hands, and spider silk is one of the main combat methods of Spider-Man. Now she is not so much fighting against Jin, as she is being beaten by Jin. Fortunately, even without spider silk, her flexibility is still very high. Moreover, her rich combat experience made her like a nimble kitten. Jin Bing's operation seemed to be going downhill, but in fact, besides destroying a lot of terrain, he was also lonely. Seeing this, Bede no longer hesitated. Seeing the opportunity, he suddenly shot out two spider threads, which happened to catch Jin Bing's raised fist on the left and right. With a sudden force, Kingpin's huge body was directly overturned. B doesn't know if he has reached the normal strength of 15 to 20 tons of most Spider-Man, but even if this number is selected as the minimum value, minus half, it has reached 7.5 tons. Although Jinji looks strong, he is just an ordinary person in the end. His strength, at best, is only 700 kilograms, which is 0.7 tons. The power gap between them is like a gap. With this huge power gap, Kingpin could only be dragged towards him by Bede. But he didn't delay for long. Bede's figure shot out, his right leg was slightly bent, and he slammed into Jin, who was lying on the ground with his knee. Kingpin was so strong that he could bend a light pole. So Bede's strength has also increased a lot. It was directly added to more than twice the amount of dealing with those little gangsters before. He estimated that even Kingpin would suffer considerable injuries if he succeeded. However, just when his knee was about to hit Jin Bin's chest, Kingpin's hands suddenly stretched out and grabbed Bede's legs in the air. "Boy, you didn't fight like this." Jin Bin let out a smirk, and his huge body sat up all of a sudden, and at the same time smashed Pete hard to the ground. "Pete!" The Gwen Spider not far away screamed and rushed to this side. "No need to come here." I'm fine," Pete yelled, and then he was hit hard twice by Jin Bing. Kingpin's power is indeed very powerful. The damage caused to Bede by these few blows even exceeded the combined value of the damage suffered in the actions this morning. However, honestly, so be it. Jinping grabbed Bede's feet and lifted him upside down, as if he wanted to see his miserable state. Bede stretched out his hand to Jin Bing and put up two middle fingers. "Is that the only way, Jin Bing? It seems that you are much weaker than I imagined. I think you might as well stop being a gangster. Go open a massage parlor, your strength is only good enough to tickle people. Humph! Let's see how long you can be so stubborn." Jin Bin snorted coldly, grabbed Bede's legs, and smashed to the ground again. Bang! But the sound this time is a little different from before. It was Pete's upper body that hit the ground before, and the sound was dull, like a ripe melon. But now, it's just a very slight sound, like a slap in the face. As we all know, raw melon eggs can kill people. It turned out that this time, Peter put his hands on the ground to stop the attack. Then, before he could get the gold and react, he used the strength of his hands to straighten his body instantly after bowing, and kicked his feet fiercely. Bang! Jin Bin's figure flew far away, smashing the wooden fence of a nearby house to pieces. Bede stepped forward again and came to Kingpin, ready to beat him. Even if he is not killed, he must be paralyzed and unable to take care of himself for the rest of his life in order to avenge the death of the ultimate spider in this world. At this time, Jin Bin got up from the ground, spat out a mouthful of blood, and said with a sneer, "You want to kill me? Then you will never want to go back." Bede's hand stopped suddenly in mid-air. It doesn't matter if he doesn't go back by himself. After all, there is a high probability that he will not be able to return to his world. He had expected this. But Gwen Spider, Shadow Spider, Penny, Spider Pigman, and middle-aged Peter Spider will all be rejected. Among them, the Gwen Spider is the most serious. Peter had only just realized this. Everyone else has only traveled through time for a few days. As for Gwen Spider, she traveled to a week ago. According to Penny, rejection will not cause much harm to the body within 2 weeks, but after 2 weeks, the rejection will intensify and even cause death. That said, the Gwen Spider is only a week away. Just when Bede hesitated, Gwen Spider suddenly shouted, "Bede, don't listen to him, don't forget what you promised her." Because Kingpin was present, she didn't tell Aunt May directly. But Bede knew that Gwen Spider was referring to his previous promise to Aunt May to defeat Jin Bin. But Bede hesitated. His decision affects the lives of 5 friends. Kingpin saw Bede's hesitation and laughed, "This Mr. Spider from another world, how about we make a bet?" Peter narrowed his eyes slightly, "How do you want to bet against each other?" A flash of light flashed in Kingpin's eyes, and he said, "The current battle ends here, I will take my people and leave. At 9 o'clock tonight, I will start my collider again under the Fisk building. By then, I will set up a dragnet, it depends on whether you dare to come." Bede understood what he meant by the bet. The bargaining chips paid by Jin Bing are the time when the collider is turned on and let Bede and others go in. And Bede's bet is the way home. Risk is the net that Jin Bin said. This means that the competition between the two sides will be brought to the light from the dark. "How do I know that you will keep your promise?" Bede sneered, "I know who you are, Wilson Fisk." Oh! Kingpin was a little surprised. Bede cheated. "In my world, there is also Wilson Fisk, whose father was a small gang leader, who died on the street because of the fire." The death of his father did not make Wilson feel sad, but made him realize that the weak and the strong social law. Listening to Bede's words, Jin Bin's face darkened visibly to the naked eye. End of this chapter. Chapter 37 Jin Bin and number 039, S Party Invitation. Chapter 37 Jin Bin's Party Invitation. In fact, Bede was talking about the story of Kim Bin in the 94 version of Spider-Man he had seen. In fact, he is also betting the gold of the two worlds is not the same in the general direction. After all, the achievements of the two seem to be similar now. A person's growth environment will shape a person's character, and character will achieve a person's career. And conversely, one can also deduce a person's character and his growth environment from his career. Of course, this only applies to this special case. Bede knew the whole story of the other Kingpin and his achievements, so he worked backwards from the achievements of this Kingpin. Judging from Jin Bing's expression, the result is obviously close. At this time, Jin Bing's heart also set off a stormy sea. Many of the past events that Bede said in his mouth, some even he himself may not remember again. But at this moment, he said it all. While Jin Bin was shocked by the wonders of the parallel universe, he also firmly believed in the fact that the Spider-Man in front of me defeated a Jin Bin. When it comes to others, how can a normal person understand so many things about him, except for his opponent whom he attaches great importance to? It was precisely because of this that Jin Bing suppressed some small thoughts in his heart. He originally wanted to reach this bet with Bede on the surface, but actually do some tricks in other places. For example, relying on some personal connections, the police in New York City found trouble with these spiders. These spiders all come from parallel universes, and obviously they all have identity issues. It's really easy to find trouble with them from this aspect. But now it seems that the other party's understanding of him is far beyond his imagination. It would be better to do it openly and generously. He Jin Bing, as a generation of heroes who ruled the underground world of New York, still has some courage. Kingpin reached into his pocket. This action made Pete and Gwen Spider vigilant. However, the next moment, Jinbin took out a bronzing invitation card from it. With a flick of his hand, he threw the invitation over like a boomerang. Pedro stretched out his hand unhurriedly and grabbed it in his hand. When I opened it, I saw that it read: Dear Mr./Madam XXX, hello, we are honored to invite you to our favorite Spider-Man memorial service on December 12th at the Fisk Tower. The date below is yesterday, signed by Wilson Fisk. Obviously, this is an invitation letter issued by Kingpin's apparent identity as a big entrepreneur. And the content was exactly the memorial service that Bede and the Shadow Spider had mentioned when they saw Jinbing when they arrived a few days ago. Click. Bede held the invitation tightly in his hands, and said with a gloomy face, Are you provoking us? Send Spider-Man to Spider-Man's memorial service? And this memorial service was held by the real murderer of Jinbing. Provocation? No, no, of course not. Kingpin said loudly, as if he was greatly insulted. In fact, whether you believe it or not, personally, I really like Mr. Spider-Man. Oh, then you killed him yourself? Do you think I will believe your nonsense? Bede said coldly. Jinbing's words even aroused his killing intent. Looking at Jinbing's pretentious fat face, he wished he could hit it hard with his fist. It is the lives of his friends that are hanging on his rationality. Kingpin laughed and said, I like him and appreciate him, but that does not mean that I will tolerate his repeated sabotage of my actions. All people and things that stand in my way will be crushed under my iron fist, Kingpin. There was even some sarcasm in his laugh, as if mocking Peter's innocence. Bede looked at him coldly. At this time, Gwen Spider came to his side and put her hand on Bede's clenched fist. Bede was taken aback for a moment, looked at her, and relaxed his hands. Gwen Spider gently opened his fingers, took the invitation letter in his hand, looked at it, and then looked up at Jinbin. Well, Mr. Fisk, at 9 o'clock tonight, Fisk Tower, see you there scattered. Bede looked at her doubtfully, wondering why she agreed. You can't believe even a single punctuation mark in what Kingpin said. But Gwen Spider didn't say anything, just gestured with his eyes to tell him to be calm, and then continued to look at Jinbin. Haha. See you there at 9 o'clock tonight, Miss Spider-Man. Kingpin looked at Gwen Spider with a flash of surprise in his eyes. Gwen Spider ignored him, took Bede's hand, and walked straight to Aunt May's house. Behind him, Jinbin looked at the two figures, thoughts spinning rapidly in his mind, but he still couldn't figure out the purpose of Gwen Spider's sudden agreement. After a while, he took out his mobile phone and said lightly, Call work, let's go. With Jinbin's order, several other places where the fighting was fierce ceased in an instant. However, in this battle, Jin did not suffer a big loss. In terms of high-end combat power, the Prowler was shot and wounded by him himself, and he is still lying on the roof waiting for rescue. Even if he could get his life back, it would be impossible to work hard for gold. In addition, there were also losses on the battlefield of Spider-Hogman, middle-aged Peter Spider and Spider-Mech Girl vs Ms. Octopus, Scorpion, and Tombstone. The three Octopus Lady were severely beaten by Spider-Pigman who was in full force. Among them, Scorpion was pulled out of his mechanical scorpion needle, and Ms. Octopus almost broke a mechanical tentacle. The Tombstone was directly beaten and lay on the ground, completely losing consciousness. Spider-Pigman and the others are going to leave him on the road and hand him over to the New York police. Tombstone is a long-established gangster force, and has committed many things in his hands. If he is sent in now, he will have to peel off his skin even if he is not dead. Even if Jinbing wants to get him out, it will probably take a lot of effort. At this point, one of the four generals brought by Kingpin was seriously injured and one was unconscious, and the remaining two escaped in embarrassment. And other aspects. Shadow Spider single-handedly eliminated 4 gunmen carrying sniper rifles and more than a dozen pistol gunners. He was ruthless in his attacks. Almost all of the sniper gunmen were killed with one shot. A few of the pistol gunmen were alive, but they were all injured to varying degrees. A trip to the hospital was unavoidable. In addition, there are the more than 30 gangsters Bede and Gwen Spider defeated in the subway station. Overall, the results were impressive. Of course, Spider-Man also suffered some damage. The most serious thing was the middle-aged Peter Spider, who was touched by the Scorpion Man's poison and had a piece of his back burned. The main component of Scorpion Man's venom is aqua regia, which is a mixture of concentrated hydrochloric acid and concentrated nitric acid in a volume ratio of 3:1. It can even melt metal, and its power is amazing. The middle-aged Peter Spider said that he had been injured on his back many years ago, leaving a hidden injury. Although he had noticed it, it was still a little too late and he was hit. The template of the middle-aged Peter Spider is similar to Toby Spider, and it is said in the play that his back was injured. End of this chapter. Chapter 38. Chapter 38. Gwen Spider was cut in the arm. Fortunately, Peter handled it in a timely and effective manner. Under Spider-Man's strong recovery power, it only took a few hours, and by dinner time, he had almost recovered. However, Bede, who was worried, took off the bandage and took a closer look, and found that the scarring had not yet begun. Then I disinfected the area around the wound again and wrapped it back with a new bandage. Although Gwen Spider felt that Bede was making a fuss, she readily accepted the feeling of being cared for and even enjoyed it. This change between the two was noticed by other Spider-Man, but no one said anything. What worried Bede and the others the most was the little black spider. At this time, the little black spider was no longer in their small group. His uncle was taken to the hospital shortly after the fighting ended. The little black spider naturally followed. I don't know if he has been rescued now. However, everyone has already acquiesced that little black spider will be absent from the evening activities. Fortunately, in their original plan, the little black spider was positioned as Bede's assistant. Although there was one less assistant, based on Bede's performance that day, Shadow Spider and others unanimously recognized him and believed that he was able to complete this mission on his own. After some discussion, they worked out the final plan for tonight's operation. The plan is divided into 4 steps. In the first step, Peter, Gwen Spider, Penny, and the middle-aged Peter Spider went to the Fisk building to attend the memorial service of Ultimate Spider together with the invitation letter given by the gold medal. According to their, mainly Penny's, investigations in the past few days, the main control room of Jinbin's particle collider is right under the Fisk building. The invitation letter from Kingpin to Bede undoubtedly added some credibility to the findings. The second step is to find Kingpin and follow him closely. Jin did the particle collider experiment in order to find his wife and son from the parallel universe and make up for his empty heart. Therefore, on the occasion of opening the particle collider, Jin Bing will definitely be there. As long as you keep up with him, you can easily find the real location of the particle collider. There is no need to bother to find a way out. This is why Gwen Spider accepted the Kingpin's bet. The third step is the Shadow Spider and Spider Ham. One of the two is good at lurking, and the other is keen in action. They will enter from the subway track provided by Little Black Spider and enter near the main part of the particle collider. This is actually brought by the Little Black Spider's uncle, the Prowler. Before all this happened, Little Black Spider was just an ordinary little boy. Prowlers give gold and do things, so there's a place to hang out in an abandoned underground warehouse near a particle collider. Firstly, it is a temporary rest place after work, and secondly, it is also a place for guards to prevent outsiders from entering by mistake and discover Jinbin's secret. After all, if you discover the secret, you will die, which is very dangerous. As for who died, I won't say. Once, the little black spider was brought here by a prowler, because there was a large blank wall for him to graffiti on. It was also that time that the little black spider was bitten by a spider, thus gaining the spider ability. Later, in order to find the spider that bit him, the little black spider came here again. He walked along the subway tracks and heard the sounds of a fight. After following the sound of fighting, he accidentally stumbled upon a battle between Ultimate Spider-Man and the Ultimate Green Goblin. So that road can go directly to Jinbin's particle collider. After learning about these things, B asked the little black spider to mark the route on the road map. Their original plan was to go directly this way. But there's a risk in going this route. That is, the little black spider was discovered by Jinbing and others at that time, and because of this, he was chased and killed by wanderers who didn't know his identity at the time. In the end, I was able to escape with the help of the subway that just started running. Therefore, Jin should take some necessary precautions on this road. The plan to combine the second step and the third step was born for this. The four bead went in openly, and then caused as much chaos as possible to attract more attention. The Shadow Spider and Spider Pigman took the opportunity to lurk in from another way, further weakening Jinbin's strength. In this way, they can keep the particle collider in their hands as much as possible. The last step, of course, is to go home and close the particle collider. The last step will be completed by Beat alone. Beat is also ready to stay in the Ultimate Spider world forever. Maybe it's not bad to inherit the mantle of Ultimate Spider and become the second Ultimate Spider-Man. The idea came to B's mind, thinking of Sergeant Orlando, who was serious and funny, and the grandma who bought him a special meat pie. He was insignificant in the previous world, and if he went back, he might let this book be ruined. Better stay here. Of course, that's just what I thought. If the little black spider can hold up the girder and be the candidate to close the collider, PETA still doesn't mind entering it to try whether he can return to the original world. Unfortunately. Just thinking about it, B knew that the little black spider must have no intention of participating in the battle now. No one will demand him at this time. However, considering that they might not see each other again after tonight, at the suggestion of the middle-aged Peter Spider, they decided to form a group to meet the little black spider. After all, we had known each other for only a few days, but it would have been a bit outrageous to say goodbye without saying goodbye. Brooklyn Community Hospital. The lights in the operating room were still on. On the bench at the door of the operating room, father and son Jefferson Davis and Miles Morales sat. Jefferson Davis hadn't taken off his police uniform yet, and when he heard Miles call, saying that Aaron Davis had been shot and was in critical condition, he rushed over immediately. Miles took off his spider suit, and he didn't want his identity to be exposed in front of his family. The expressions of the father and son were exactly the same at this time, both of them were worried. The injury of Aaron Davis, Prowler, is obviously more serious than expected. This operation has been going on for 2 hours, but there is still no sign of it ending. Jefferson Davis had his elbows on his knees, his forehead in his hands, his forehead was covered with sweat, and the tension in his heart was almost to the extreme. Aaron Davis was already in the emergency room when he arrived, but he knew the location of the shooting from Miles' description. It is likely to hit the lungs, which is more ominous than good. And little black spider was filled with regret at this moment. He was thinking that if it hadn't been for him, Uncle Aaron would never have been shot. He even had a thought, if it wasn't for his accidental intrusion, wouldn't Spider-Man have to die? Did he kill Spider-Man? And now, will he kill Uncle Aaron the same way he killed Spider-Man? End of this chapter. Chapter 39 The So-Called. Chapter 39 The So-Called Fatalism. Click. There was an unusual banging from the window at the end of the corridor. The sound is relatively subtle, and the window is more than 10 meters away from the seat. It is naturally impossible for ordinary people's ears to hear it, let alone Jefferson Davis, who was immersed in grief at this time. But the little black spider, which had been enhanced by spider genes, heard it clearly. He raised his head subconsciously and looked over there. Then I saw a hand flashing away. Red. There are also spider web-like grid points on it. It's Mr. Parker's hand. The little black spider glanced at its father, got up and walked towards the window. Behind him, Jefferson Davis noticed his son getting up and leaving, but he just thought he was going to the bathroom or something and said nothing. The little black spider walked to the window, and before he could look outside the window, he was pulled in by the hand stretched out from the side utility room. Then, the door was also gently closed. This is a hospital, no loud noises are allowed. This is cultivation. The middle-aged Peter Spider put his hand on the little black spider's shoulder. Hey, Miles, how is your uncle? The little black spider said dejectedly, it's still being rescued, maybe. Bede reached out and put his hand on his other shoulder, comforting, don't think so, he will be fine. Well, thank you, Bede. The little black spider looked at Bede and said gratefully, if you hadn't pulled it at that time, and Uncle Aaron was shot in the heart, then it is impossible to be shot again then and now. Chance of rescue. Bede sighed slightly and said, if you want to thank me, wait until Uncle you gets better and ask him to buy me a drink. Although he said that, he was actually quite pessimistic in his heart. He was thinking, if he had used more force at that time, would the current situation be much better? It's a pity that money is hard to buy and I knew it earlier. Now, I can only do my best to obey the destiny. Before traveling through time, he had heard a fatalism about Spider-Man, which was that every Spider-Man would lose a close relative or someone close to him. For example, a few people present. What Shadow Spider lost was his uncle. The middle-aged Peter Spider also lost his Uncle Ben. Gwen Spider lost her best friend Peter Parker. What Penny lost was her father. Her mecha abilities and responsibilities were all inherited from him. The only exceptions are Pete and Spider-Ham. Spider-Ham has nothing to lose, because he is a character in funny comics, and funny comics go in the direction of children, so there is no need for tragic embellishment. And B, he's from the real world. Perhaps this so-called fatalism cannot affect him. Or maybe it hasn't had time to influence him. In fact, whether it was before or after the time travel, B didn't believe in fatalism at all. This is not only because of Hans Ya's idea of man can conquer nature passed down from generation to generation, but also because from the perspective of the real world, everything in the Marvel universe is just set by editors. This is called fate. So his existence, which comes from outside the destiny, is completely beyond the editor's setting range. Does this mean that he can ignore all this existence? At this moment, Peter hoped very much that the Prowler could be rescued. Because this means that there is no so-called fatalism in this world. At least, not in front of him. The little black spider forced a smile, seemed to regain its strength, and nodded, yes. I will tell him. Then, he looked at the others, this is what you are doing. The shadow spider said, let's come to see you and say goodbye to you by the way. After saying that, he jumped out of the window behind him. Spider-Ham and Penny also briefly said goodbye and left here. Little Black Spider said anxiously, what are you doing? Why do you have to say goodbye here? We can also say goodbye at the collider. Bede's hand used a little force and squeezed his shoulder, no, your uncle needs you more. As for that, I will take care of it. Right. Gwen Spider nodded, don't worry, Bede is very reliable. Just stay here with peace of mind, Miles. Gwen. The little black spider hesitated, looking at the Gwen Spider with something wrong. Hey. Bede tightened his grip and turned to Gwen Spider, Gwen, please leave first. The Gwen Spider rolled her eyes at him, said goodbye to the little black spider, and jumped out of the window. Miles, I have to warn you, don't play Gwen's idea. Bede threatened. The little black spider looked at the direction where Gwen Spider left, then looked at Bede in a little bewilderment, and finally looked at the middle-aged Peter Spider, casting a look for help. The middle-aged Peter Spider shrugged, I don't care about the emotional problems between you young people, but I advise you to give up early, Miles. As he spoke, he patted the little black spider's shoulder comfortingly. Then Pete said, hey, P, let him go, he has suffered a double blow. Peter snorted softly, and let go of his hand. Although he and Gwen Spider only have a crush on each other and are still in an ambiguous period, it would be great if he could kill a love rival first. We can obviously go both ways, why should we make it more difficult for ourselves? Bede said he was not such a person. Okay, I understand. The little black spider lowered its head, looking a little frustrated. He did have a good impression of the Gwen Spider, but as soon as this small flame of goodwill ignited, it was extinguished by Bede. Bede grinned and stretched out his hand, "Give me the gadget." The little black spider subconsciously touched his pocket, but said stubbornly, "The gadget is not on me. I put it in the pocket of the suit. I'm going to get it now." With that said, he made a gesture and was about to leave. "Call out." A thread of spider silk shot out from Bede's hand, directly sticking to the little black spider. "What are you doing?" The little black spider screamed, and then it realized and reached out to pull the spider silk. However, Bede, who was not a martial artist, had already approached him and knocked him to the ground with a sweep. At the same time, the spider silk that stuck to his body made a large circle around the little black spider's body, tying up his hands. Bede leaned down, took out a gadget from little black spider's trouser pocket, and said, "Look, I'm telling you, you're not ready yet." After saying that, he jumped out of the window. He didn't have anything to say goodbye. After all, according to the plan, he would eventually stay in the Ultimate Universe. Although this was not what he wanted, since the matter had reached this point, he could only accept it. He had already thought about it. If he stayed here, he would inherit the mantle of Ultimate Spider and continue to be Spider-Man. As for the future path, he can look for it while being Spider-Man. End of this chapter. Chapter 40 This is a belief. Chapter 40 It's a faith. In the utility room, the middle-aged Peter Spider looked at the little black spider that was knocked to the ground in one fell swoop. He had to admit that although in terms of time, the little black spider took longer to acquire abilities, 7 days, Peter's the combat talent is much higher than that of little black spider. Especially after going through a morning of actual combat assessment, the performance of the two is very different. This gap made the middle-aged Peter Spider dim his thoughts. In fact, he originally wanted to suggest that he believed in the little black spider, so that Peter could also go home. But now it seems that the little black spider is obviously unable to bear the heavy responsibility. So I had to give up. He bent down and helped the little black spider uncover the spider silk on its body. The little black spider was a little angry, and was about to rush out of the window to catch up, but was held down by the middle-aged Peter Spider. "That's enough, Miles, you're not ready yet, give up." The little black spider said angrily, "What are you not prepared for?" "I'm completely prepared. I can do it." The middle-aged Peter Spider grabbed his clothes, pulled him in front of him, and said in a low voice, "If you are really ready, use your electricity to stun me. Or you can hide and walk past me, just hide it." After all, he was also the first person he met in this world. If possible, he still wanted to give him another chance. The little black spider was stunned for a moment, clenched his fists, and started working hard. But it was obvious that it was just a morning of exercise, coupled with the fact that he was now suffering from mental trauma due to his uncle's injury, it even made him doubt himself. All of this caused him to lose the freedom to control his abilities. No matter how hard he tried, nothing happened. The current is also good. Be invisible. Nothing. Myers, please spend time with your uncle. I believe you also hope that you can get the news that he has successfully passed the life and death crisis as soon as possible. The middle-aged Peter Spider let go of his clothes and said. The little black spider's originally excited heart was calmed down by the middle-aged Peter Spider's words. The scene when Uncle Aaron was getting along with him once again resurfaced in his mind, and the scene where Uncle Aaron lay dying in his arms after being shot not long ago emerged. The light in his eyes gradually disappeared. The middle-aged Peter Spider became more and more disappointed, and his last thought was completely stifled by him. He gently patted the little black spider on the shoulder. "Goodbye, Miles." "Goodbye." The little black spider raised his hand, only to find that the middle-aged Peter Spider had disappeared from the window. He ran to the window and asked aloud, "How will I know if I'm ready?" The figure wearing a red and blue spider suit paused on the wall and replied, "You will never know, this is a belief." Then, he moved again. The little black spider froze in place, looking at the street in the distance. He could vaguely see a figure wearing a red and blue spider suit, swaying with spider silk and gradually walking away, and finally disappeared around the corner. Finally, he whispered, "Goodbye, everyone." New York nights are multifaceted. For a civilian area, it's a haven for carnival and crime. For the rich area, this is the summary and ending of a good day. Today, in the towering Fisk building, a well-known hero is also making the final summary and ending of his life. Our beloved Spider-Man Memorial Service. The host is Mr. Wilson Fisk, a great philanthropist and entrepreneur in this city. The Fisk building is a skyscraper with more than 30 floors and a height of nearly 200 meters. Even in the city of New York, where there are many high-rise buildings, it is one of the rare ones. But no one knows how much black money was used to build this building. Of course, few people care about this. People who know this won't talk about it, and people who don't know this may never know it in their lifetime. You can see this just by looking at the celebrities and ladies getting off the vehicles. They were dressed in gold and silver, elegantly dressed, and had friendly smiles on their faces. Obviously, for them, this so-called memorial service and charity dinner are just activities that they use to meet their social needs through the name of Spider-Man. It is no different from previous activities. Several figures suddenly appeared among the crowd. A man with a big belly, a man with a strong figure, a woman with a graceful figure, and a little girl sitting on a round mecha. The four of them were either wearing spider suits or had similar logos. These four people were incompatible with the crowd entering the building now. Are these waiters too? I heard that tonight's waiters are all dressed as Spider-Man. A well-dressed man said. Obviously, but these clothes are so ugly, please don't come to my place then. The man's companion, a woman in an evening dress, looked at Bede and others with disgust and said. Another man, also wearing a crisp suit, must have just heard the conversation between the two people, and asked curiously, "Isn't there a memorial service for Mr. Spider-Man Parker tonight? Why did the waiter dress up as Spider-Man?" Giggle the woman laughed and replied, "Isn't Spider-Man our good neighbor? Isn't it normal to serve us? These bastards!" Bede clenched his fists. Although he hadn't seen the ultimate spider with his own eyes, he had learned a little about fighting the villains for this city for more than 10 years in the past 2 days. It can be said that he has saved this city and even the world from danger several times. He was a true hero, yet he was treated like this after his death. At this moment, a gentle hand took Bede's arm. Gwen Spider said softly, "Don't pay attention to them, we have what we have to do." The middle-aged Peter Spider on the side also said, "We can't make everyone like us, and that's okay, Bede." "You're not angry at all?" Bede asked. Gwen Spider shook his head, "In my world, there are much worse things than this. If you get angry about this kind of thing every day, how can you get angry? That's right, if you're really overwhelmed, you can also think about those people and things that make you happy," the middle-aged Peter Spider patiently enlightened. For him, Peter and the little black spider are both juniors. They will all go their separate ways in the future. And as a senior, he naturally tried his best to let them go as smoothly as possible, and not to go through the things he went through. "Well, I see." Peter nodded. "Hey, Bidianison, eat a candy, it's sweet, and drive away all unhappiness." Penny threw a candy from the side. After Peter opened his mouth to eat, he really felt much better in his heart. "Thank you, let's have a big fight. Let Kingpin know the consequences of disrespecting the dead." End of this chapter. Like, and subscribe.